the whole family. Husband, wife, and 2 children, gone, like poof, disappeared.
Who's ever heard of an entire family going missing?
To hold lots of happy memories for this young family. For a short time, it did. But then on February 4th, 2010, Joseph McStay, his wife Summer, their 2 young sons vanished from here without a trace.
They were living in San Clemente, California. I remember them in the little tiny apartment that they lived in. And Summer gave birth to Giovanni. And they did have their second child in this small little San Clemente apartment too. So as Summer and Joe grew their family, they outgrew the little beach place that they were living in.
When Joey moved to Fallbrook, I think he was really excited of being a homeowner.
He was ready to move into a bigger house, have a yard for the kids.
There's a decent sized yard here for sure. Fruit trees. This is cool. Look how big the side yard is. I can do a lot over here with the boys.
I think Joseph was really on the upswing in terms of his business, his personal life, and Joseph had his own business, Earth Inspired Products.
He sold these high-end custom water features, the type you might see in hotels and business lobbies.
He actually started his business, I think, like in his garage, designing his own features by hand. And he had a partner, Daniel Kavanaugh.
I actually made the whole website. I was able to build a site that was like the Amazon of wall fountains. And then I stuck it to the top of Google for every keyword.
In terms of his website knowledge, that was the perfect partner to get him where he needed to be in the search rankings.
As the online business was growing, Joseph hired a welder to build the custom fountains.
Chase Merritt was Joseph's fabricator on the custom side. He would weld and manufacture smaller scale water walls for Joseph.
In a video posted to the company's YouTube page, Chase is seen putting together one of his newly built water features.
Once they started doing business together, they were on the phone constantly.
On February 4th, Chase says he and Joseph met in Rancho Cucamonga, where Chase lived, and they had lunch together at a Chick-fil-A. Afterwards, Chase says that Joseph stopped returning calls or answering emails.
When Chase couldn't get a hold of Joseph that weekend, he expressed concern, like, if you can't get a hold of him, that's unusual, and like we should do something. And that's when he reached out to the family.
Joseph's web designer and business partner, Dan Kavanaugh, also reached out to the family when he also could not get a hold of Joseph. But then he takes it one step further.
I just took the initiative and I just called the cops. I put a welfare check in and I was like, hey, go by this address and see if they're okay.
San Diego County Sheriff's Office deputies conduct a welfare check at the McStay home. Nobody is home at the time, but there are no signs that anything is amiss, so deputies simply follow procedure and do not go inside. And then 11 days after the family was last heard from, Joseph's brother, Michael McStay, files a missing persons report. Now, he speaks to police in a recorded interview detailing the mysterious disappearance.
Yeah, nobody's talked to Joseph since before the 4th.
Well, what brought you from trying to call him on February 4th, getting nothing?
All the friends calling me, telling me that, have you heard from Joe? What's going on?
Dennis Brugos is a retired lieutenant from the San Diego County Sheriff's Office. He oversaw the investigation, and I spoke with him outside of the home where the McStays had lived. And once those sheriff's deputies come out here, what are they looking for?
If the doors are locked from the outside, and check the windows, you look around, you go around the house.
Deputies, they don't notice anything particularly alarming. No forced entry. But they do notice that the family's beloved dogs are left unattended in the yard, barking away, haven't been fed, have no water.
And then they probably see the note pasted on the side door here from animal control, basically alerting the family that the dogs have been abandoned.
Yes.
What does that signal to the deputies?
And that raised red flags because by all accounts, they were very good pet owners. They took very good care of their dogs, and for them to do that would be completely out of character for them.
I mean, their dogs were like their second kids. They would have never done that, ever, in a million years.
Once we were inside, it appeared that people just got up and walked away. There were some perishable foods on the counter in the kitchen. As I recall, there were a couple of half-eaten bowls of popcorn in front of a television.
Is it alarming to find uncooked eggs, popcorn strewn about on the couch?
I don't know if that alone is alarming, but I mean, when you put the whole picture together, them not contacting people, the dogs, perishable food left out, and all those things together makes you think it raises the level of suspicion that something's not right.
And what do we know at this point about the McStay's vehicles?
Well, we knew that one of the vehicles was parked here in a driveway and the other one wasn't here.
The McStay's white Isuzu Trooper is missing, and inside the home there are clothes that are just strewn about.
Deputies are looking around thinking, is there something really wrong here? But given that, they still didn't see blood spatter, no signs of struggles, no walls kicked in, no broken glass.
When you look at the situation at the house, then you start looking at the family situation. Who were these people? Were they possibly targets of some criminals for some unknown reason?
And then investigators get a break in the case. The family car is found not far from here along the US-Mexico border. And then a surveillance camera, just like this one, captures what appears to be a family of 4 going into Mexico. So now the question is, are the McStays running from something or someone?
This is pretty close to the waves that we would surf, actually. Even a little bigger than Joe is comfortable with, but I can get him out there, and we love the ocean.
Holy cow, it's breaking at the reef. See those guys out here? Look at that.
And what did you make of Joseph when you met him?
He was chill. I liked just surfing with him, you know. We're pretty simple.
What was life like for Joseph and Summer when they were living in San Clemente?
As our business got more successful, it became like the perfect life. You got your girl, now you got your kids, you're right by the beach. You can go surfing, you can run an online business. It's the American dream.
To me, Summer was exotic. She had dark hair, dark eyes, dark skin, and she also had a really big, cute smile. When she got engaged, Summer was telling me that, you know, she wanted me in her wedding. And the wedding was held at a beautiful venue here in South Orange County. And it was very fun and playful. And then when she got pregnant, she was thrilled that she was pregnant and starting the second part of her dream come true with Joey.
They had 2 kids.
Joseph Jr. and Gianni.
And they knew you. What did they call you?
They would call me Uncle Dan. They're cute little kids, you know. I'd come over, play some guitar, hang out with them.
They would go on bike rides as a family along the beach.
I'm having so much fun.
And I think they just were happy in their bubble.
They wanted to stay in San Clemente because of the surf, but they found that they had a lot nicer options down by Fallbrook. They were trying to renovate the new house, so they were going to do that all by themselves.
We're going to rip out the cabinets. I'll be putting a beautiful granite here, beautiful wood floors all through here as well.
They had barely started their home renovation projects when they suddenly disappeared in February of 2010.
As time went on, we started getting more worried.
It was just devastating. Time stops and you're in disbelief and shock.
After the San Diego County Sheriff's investigators visit the McStay's home, it takes another 4 days to get their warrants approved to allow them to remove evidence from the home. And what happens within those 4 days could critically alter the course of the entire investigation. It's not considered a crime scene, right?
That's correct. It wasn't a crime scene. There was nothing that suggested any type of foul play, but still, we were going to run with it.
What doesn't happen, though, is the house is not roped off, you don't see tape on the door, nothing like that.
Right.
And at that point, Joe McStay's mother comes in, and she decides to try to clean up. And so you don't actually know if she actually may have destroyed evidence because you weren't quite sure what evidence was in the house to begin with.
That's correct.
Investigators are also really interested in getting information on that Isuzu Trooper that belonged to the family. But the thing is, it could be anywhere. And then they run the plates, and they find out that the car is 60 miles away.
It was at a parking lot in a shopping center that was at the San Diego-Mexico border, and the vehicle had been towed. Now, what investigators still don't know is if the McStays themselves parked their vehicle here or if it was someone else.
What's incredible is that we're just several hundred yards from the border. I mean, the wall's right there.
That's correct. Certainly walking distance, even with children.
When the car was impounded and detectives actually got to it, did they find any evidence that was useful?
They had the child safety seats in the back seat.
Yeah.
There was some medication that one of the children was taking, I believe, for asthma, but nothing else of any real significance.
Until February 8th, that Isuzu Trooper was parked here. How does that influence the trajectory of the investigation going forward?
Well, from that point, then you're trying to say, why is the trooper down here? The international border's a block and a half away, so did they cross the border and go into Mexico voluntarily or involuntarily?
Police turn their attention to any surveillance video that might be at that border. And sure enough, after going through hours and hours of footage, they see a family of 4 calmly walking across the border on the very same day that that Isuzu Trooper had been towed from the parking lot.
And so it seems that a surveillance camera just like this one captured what looked like the McStay family crossing into Mexico.
That's correct. And at that point, you know, it was exciting from the perspective of the investigators that like we might have a lead here.
When we saw the footage of them in Mexico, supposedly, that was kind of a relief. They had found his car very close to the border, and so that made sense.
Investigators also do a forensic search of the McStays' computers, and they uncover what looks like an important lead. They call Michael McStay to break the news.
Hi, Mike.
Hey.
Finally got a little bit of a lead.
That's good.
We did the computer analysis, and on January 28th, somebody inside the residence on the computer using Internet Explorer, there were multiple inquiries to crossing into the Mexico area with children and what's required for passports. That coupled with the video and the placement of the car would indicate that they probably went to Mexico.
It seemed like every time you turn on the TV, there was something about it.
It became a huge local story. Forensic computer experts found important new clues on the McStays family computer that indicates the family researched and planned their getaway across this border into Mexico.
I remember there were some chat rooms about, well, Joey brings all these materials from Mexico. Maybe he's involved with the cartels.
We heard everything. There were so many crazy theories.
Adding to those theories and questions, Joseph's friend and business associate, Gina Watson, found some other possibly Mexico-related information while combing through Joseph and Summers' email for any clues.
So the email that I saw was about Rosetta Stone Spanish, and she wanted Joseph to go purchase it, and she was excited about it. It doesn't necessarily mean they use the Rosetta Stone to change their life and move to Mexico or something, but it's definitely a possibility.
But when Gina Watson takes a deeper dive into the McStays' accounts, she stumbles upon something that she finds alarming. It looks like someone has been taking money out of the company's account. Now, could that be connected to the family's disappearance? The McStay family has vanished without a trace from their California home. Eventually, the call for answers grows more forceful and becomes national.
Really disturbing story, so they need your tips more than ever.
Family members have searched near the San Ysidro-Tijuana border, where the McStays' vehicle was found abandoned.
Detectives are thinking it appears that they went to Mexico, and it was their choice.
We felt that, you know, there was a possibility that, it was a strong possibility that they left voluntarily and there was no coercion involved.
But those close to the McStays are just not convinced the family would head down to Mexico without telling anyone.
It was totally out of character as a husband and wife and family to be romping around.
Can I give you my number to pass along to them so they can call me?
Joseph's brother, Michael McStay, is equally suspicious that something just isn't right. Weeks after the disappearance, Michael goes back to the home this time with a camera, and he's looking for clues and expressing his doubts.
Now look, all his surfboards are here, so we didn't go surfing in Mexico, guys. The double stroller here,
the double
stroller is here. They don't go anywhere without their double stroller. I mean, if they were down there, there's no phones in Mexico to call your family and say, hey, I'm drinking a Mai Tai down on the beach with $1 bazillion in the bank. No, it's just not like Joe.
Meanwhile, Gina Watson has been helping Joseph McStay's father, Patrick, comb through emails, trying to find any clues. Since Gina and Patrick also doubt that the McStays traveled to Mexico willingly, they now believe that something far more sinister has gone down. At the time of the family's disappearance, Gina and Patrick knew that Earth-inspired products was poised to land some large contracts.
He and I both thought, since Joseph was about to come into money through his business, that it could be a financial motive for someone. And then I saw that there were withdrawals from the PayPal account.
Joseph had PayPal set up so that he could pay money to vendors or receive money from clients.
Gina notices several emails requesting money from the business account via PayPal from Dan Kavanaugh on February 6th, and several more after that, all of them totaling almost $7,000, all of which was withdrawn before the McStays had even been reported missing. So San Diego detectives called Dan Kavanaugh to ask him about those PayPal transactions.
And let me ask you this, Dan, I know you have access for PayPal and PayPal transfers.
Yeah.
All the way back to like the 5th.
You want me to do this? Itemize out all the transfers and get you like receipts and stuff.
And what kind of explanation did you give them about the PayPal accounts after the McStays went missing?
Maintaining the business, keeping it afloat, keeping the lights on, you know, paying our vendors.
Did the investigator seem satisfied with your answers?
Yeah, and I could provide documentation, spreadsheets, proof, like everything.
If you could do that and just shoot me a quick ledger on where the money went, that way my questions are answered.
The San Diego sheriffs say that they were satisfied with the information Kavanaugh provided, and he was cleared. Gina Watson also gives a tip to detectives about Chase Merritt. He's the welder who builds Joseph's custom water fountains, someone Gina claims had a history of customer complaints.
You have to talk to Chase Merritt. I actually emailed the detective.
Gina knows Chase Merritt not just through Joseph, but also from the water feature industry, and she said she'd had direct experience dealing with him.
I would say he was good with his hands and good with metal, but there were complaints.
By his own account, Chase Merritt was the last person to see Joseph McStay. Since he's a priority interview for San Diego investigators, they sit down with him 2 days after the McStays are reported missing.
Joseph was one of my best friends, and obviously, and my business associate. And I can't remember a day that I haven't talked to him almost every single day for the last at least 2 years.
Investigators have lots of questions for Chase. Among them, what was that lunch at Chick-fil-A about?
I saw Joseph Thursday around noon. Thursday, which day? Thursday the 4th. Where'd you see him? At Chick-fil-A. We just had to go over all kinds of money stuff. Nothing to do with the disappearance, whether it's good or bad. Absolutely not, no. I don't know of anybody that has anything to gain by Joseph being gone.
Well, Chase wanted to find Joseph, so, I mean, he was willing to do anything he could to help the investigation.
Kathy Jarvis, Chase's girlfriend at the time, says that any allegations of unhappy customers were just untrue.
Go ahead and put the first piece of glass in.
On the Waterfall Company's YouTube page, Chase displays his handiwork.
He absolutely cared about his work and how it reflected on him.
At this point, there's really not much to do with Chase Merritt. They take a DNA sample and send him on his way.
With no fresh clues to follow, and because investigators believe it is possible the family left the country voluntarily, the question of what happened to the McStays remains a mystery for the next few years.
So in 2013, the Sheriff's Department, they felt that they had exhausted all of their leads, so they felt that their best case was to turn it over to the FBI.
As the days and weeks and months went on, we felt very hopeless and helpless.
But not long after the case is handed over to the FBI, a shocking discovery comes to light in the Mojave Desert.
North Victorville. It's high desert. It's about 3,000 feet elevation, kind of a desolate area. A popular sport in the high desert is riding and racing motorcycles. It was Veterans Day, 2013, and I had the day off, so I went out. It was a nice morning, cool and early. When I go riding, I usually try to avoid most well-traveled roads and just look for trails and rougher roads. I'm going very slow, and I saw what I thought was kind of like an upside-down a tortoise shell, which would be strange. When I walked over there, and it didn't look like a tortoise shell. Well, it looked like part of a skull. But it was no bigger than probably the palm of my hand. It's a heartbreaking thing because I couldn't help but think it was small.
911, what's your emergency? I'm out here on a motorcycle out behind the dump, and I found what looks like a human skull.
The disappearance of the McStay family has haunted family, friends, and the community for almost 4 years. And now, about 100 miles away from where they lived in Fallbrook, California, evidence unearthed from the sands of the Mojave might provide long-sought answers as to what happened to this family. That's what's so crazy about it, is that it feels like it's in the middle of nowhere, but you know, we're a quarter mile from this busy freeway.
Very, very true, yeah.
Detective Eddie Bachman was a homicide investigator with the San Bernardino Sheriff's Office when that 911 call came in. A team of investigators, including a forensic pathologist, was dispatched to the location right off the I-15 freeway between Los Angeles and Las Vegas. It wasn't just the bones by the side of the road that the dirt biker found.
Correct. Once they kind of started doing the grid tour, the walkthrough of the area, that's when they located the graves.
2 graves just under 2 feet deep, containing human remains. Investigators begin to excavate the area carefully.
So you start removing some of the dirt slowly. As we start peeling it back, then we realize at that point that we've got 4 victims out here.
What's the realization for you?
It's huge to me at that point. You occasionally have one where, yeah, there's a victim that's located in the desert, but it's generally not of that volume. So it was at the end of the second day that we're able to get dental record comparison done and determine that the 2 adults were identified as Joseph and Summer McStay.
It takes a few more days to identify the remains of Gianni and Joseph Jr. through DNA testing. And for the McStay's loved ones, it's a tragic resolution to the mystery of the family's sudden disappearance years earlier.
It's not really the outcome we were looking for, but it gives us courage to know that they're together and they're in a better place.
That was such a hard day to see Michael on the press conference, barely holding it together. On the one hand, it's like finally you know something, but then there's all these other questions.
How did that happen? How did they get there? And, you know, who did this? And something really terrible happened to them.
San Bernardino Sheriff's investigators now have the grim task of figuring out how the McStays met their fate. As they're scraping away layer upon layer of those shallow graves, are you able to notice anything about what might have happened?
So initially, when I was working on the grave over where Joseph was recovered, we noticed obviously there was some type of blunt force trauma to his head, but he also had an extension cord that was tied around his neck and that was bound down to his lower extremities. There's obviously some malice or something that was involved with that.
In the grave with Joseph McStay was his son, Joey Jr. And in the second grave were Summer and Gianni, but also a crucial piece of evidence.
Ultimately, once the victims were removed from the grave, then we located a Stanley sledgehammer underneath the victims.
Did that give you an indication that perhaps that was the murder weapon?
Yeah, and initially looking at it, the size of the sledgehammer was consistent with the impact marks that were left on the victims.
And even though it's been nearly 4 years, an incredible clue remains, seemingly formed by a heavy rainstorm and then baked in by the hot desert sun.
There were sets of tire impressions that had backed up to where each grave were at.
Did it seem to you that this was one car, two cars?
Based on the size of the tire impressions, it seemed that it was one car that backed up.
So at this point you have 4 bodies. You now know it's the McStay family. This must have just cracked this case wide open.
Yeah.
So you now know what happened to them. You just don't know who did it to them.
Correct.
When the bodies were first discovered, some of our first thoughts were, this has to be a cartel hit. Like, who does this? Murders people and buries their bodies out in the middle of the desert.
You think about what they possibly saw or feared. You think about, as a mother, wanting to protect those children. And it's heartbreaking, it really is.
San Bernardino detectives begin to gather all the information they can from San Diego investigators, but with no crime scene, no witnesses, they're basically starting from scratch. Who could have done this? And they begin by asking Joseph McStay's brother, Michael.
They got pulled away from the house by somebody that was comfortable to them.
So when we met with Michael and we talked with him, he believed that there were some people that we needed to look into. Charles Chase Merritt and Dan Kavanaugh.
What could have led to this horrible crime? Can answers be found in angry messages sent to Joseph McStay? That does sound like a threat. Or perhaps in possible evidence of a romance gone bad.
I found an email that said, "I love you forever, happy birthday, Summer, forever and ever."
Two of the bodies found here in the Victorville Desert are those of Joseph and Summer McStay.
With this finality, Joseph's friends and surfer buddies, they hold a special memorial service on the water, something that surfers call a paddle out.
This is something that they love to do, so we feel like this would be important.
The paddle out was after they found him, and we finally could kind of have some closure. It was very touching.
Question now, who killed Joseph and his family? Homicide investigators from San Bernardino start by touching base with the San Diego Sheriff's Department to get all the information that they have from the missing persons case.
We met with them, we got the copies of their case files, but at that point it's our investigation, so we start from scratch.
It could have been anybody. You had to really look at everything with a open eye.
They want to talk to anyone who the San Diego investigators might have heard from that had any issue with Joseph McStay or his wife.
So Vic Johansson was one of Summer's ex-boyfriends, and they didn't have the best breakup.
We know that at some time in the past, Vic Johansson pled no contest to making criminal threats to a neighbor.
What bothered me was that I found an email from December of 2009 to Summer, and it said, "I love you forever, happy birthday, Summer, forever and ever." It was just odd.
And there was a question of, oh, is he following them? Does he have an issue with the family? In the end, however, we were able to contact him, we were able to verify his whereabouts, and it excluded him from the list of suspects.
And then there was Michael McFadden. He's a man who was married to Joseph's ex-wife and was the stepdad to his oldest son. Now, years before, he'd pleaded guilty to an assault on an ex-girlfriend, during which police reported that she had claimed that he'd said, "He was going to kill me."
There were some issues between Michael McFadden and the McStays, just over some stuff to do with the children.
He was frustrated that he was being looked at as a suspect. However, he was very open with us and provided the records to say, hey, I wasn't in the area.
So while those people are cleared, the investigators are also looking at McStay's business associates. looking for anything unusual there.
We looked at Joseph's business, Earth Inspired Products.
Dan Kavanaugh was the company webmaster, and he was critical for driving internet business to the website. But over the past year, his once close relationship with Joseph, it had soured because he believed that Joseph McStay and Chase Merritt were cutting him out of money.
Because he was doing other deals with this new guy, I had no idea.
Chase Merritt?
Yeah.
What did you tell Joseph?
I was like, what's up, bro? Like, what are you doing? Like, you owe money now, dude.
So these are the text messages between Joseph and Dan Kavanaugh.
Yes.
This is pretty testy.
Yeah, absolutely. As you read the messages, you see that he's threatening to remove the site, and that's Joseph's livelihood.
Kavanaugh says it'll be about 30 days from today that your site is gone from the search engines. You treat me like a kid, like I'm dumb. Joseph responds, I, Summer, and the kids know the real you and what you would potentially do to harm me and my family.
That was his answer.
What does that mean to you?
That just sounded like a fake answer to me. And I didn't make any like threats. All I'm saying is that I can stop the marketing to the site.
That does sound like a threat.
Yeah, but that's all I could do at that point.
And so
to make him take it seriously.
Despite the animosity, McStay had been paying Kavanaugh, and Kavanaugh says their business relationship was still being resolved when Joseph and his family went missing. Kavanaugh says that after Joseph disappeared, he had to take charge of operations.
You can't just not pay all the bills. The business goes under.
Remember, Kavanaugh acknowledged to the police that he made several withdrawals of thousands of dollars from the company account. And while the family at first did have some questions about what was happening, Kavanaugh says ultimately he satisfied their concerns.
Well, yeah, because there'd be no company anymore if I don't pay the costs associated, right? So then there's nothing.
It made sense to me that they probably used Dan to keep the business going.
But Gina Watson says what didn't quite make sense is what happened after. But over a year later, Dan Kavanaugh sold the business.
Everybody was really upset about that because they didn't feel he had a right to.
Did you give part of the proceeds to the surviving McStay family?
No, they didn't create the business with us.
These are questions that we had as we're investigating it, because this is a problem, right? Is it a business deal gone bad, or is it something more than that?
But it wasn't like a huge blow up, like you didn't talk to him anymore or anything like that. I mean, you guys still talk.
Yeah.
You still talked every day.
But when we interviewed Dan, Dan said that things were all good with them.
I know that I sold a company, and I don't see any laws broken. I own half that company, and I have the legal right to sell that company if I want.
He felt that Joseph owed him this money. He felt that he was entitled to it, which is why he took it.
Not only that, but Kavanaugh is able to provide investigators with an alibi.
And he is also able to tell us where he was when the family went missing and provide photographs of where he was, which was in Hawaii.
I had taken my girlfriend with me at the time, and we were out there just surfing and hanging out.
Investigators are convinced that alibi clears Dan Kavanaugh as a suspect. But while investigators are talking with Kavanaugh, he's got a suggestion for them of someone who already is on their radar. The other main person in the business, Chase Merritt.
Chase owed him like 30 G's on these books around the time he disappeared.
Okay.
Interesting, huh?
Yeah, very. Absolutely.
And then he's probably going to get kicked off the whole deal and then lose maybe hundreds of thousands in the future over many years. So that's a lot of motive to me.
Are there still other secrets for investigators to uncover in this case? And what is it you see in this murky video from a security camera across the street from the McStay's home? Could it be the murderer caught on tape? So at this point, you have 4 bodies. You now know it's the McStay family.
Everything shifts. We have a quadruple murder investigation.
Unfathomable. Just a family of 4, completely murdered. It's like,
So you now know what happened to them. You just don't know who did it to them.
There were some people that we needed to look into, Chase Merritt and Dan Kavanaugh.
They're missing a motive. Joseph and Chase literally adored each other.
They twisted the truth into something that fit their narrative.
You're writing checks to yourself in your boss's name the day he disappears off the face of the earth?
It's a coincidence that they disappeared that day.
The defense team tells that jury the killer has to be somebody else.
They pointed the finger right at you.
Yeah.
Like, I have a full detailed confession from him.
Did you ever confess anything to her?
No. That's a joke.
It was just like, oh boy, what are they gonna pull out of their back pocket?
Now, jurors prepare to hear some mind-blowing evidence.
Did you murder that family?
Cadillac bike. What's up, Jay? First bike ride ever. Jay, come here.
Who's ever heard of an entire family going missing?
We begin with a California murder mystery. The family of 4 vanished from their Fallbrook home.
The whole family. Husband, wife, and 2 children. Poof, disappeared.
It's a years-long mystery, but there is a break in the case. It was out here in the Mojave Desert in California where this dirt biker going off-road makes that grim discovery, a human skull.
And then the story blew up.
We begin with breaking news on a mystery.
Detectives ultimately find the remains of the McStay family, and they're buried in 2 shallow graves here in the Mojave, about 100 miles away from their home.
It's believed that the murder weapon was a sledgehammer because one was found in the gravesite.
This is pretty much the same kind of hammer.
Yeah, it's really very uncommon for us to even find a murder weapon in most cases.
And so many big questions follow, but the biggest one of them all, who killed that family?
We're gonna find this individual, or individuals. I know that the sheriffs, the FBI, everybody wants to bring this to justice.
My name is Randy Knocken.
San Bernardino detectives are now on the hunt for a killer. And they're looking over old case files from former detectives trying to get clues.
Investigators focus in on the 2 men who worked closely with Joseph McStay on the online water fountain business, including his business partner, Dan Kavanaugh. Kavanaugh had been involved in this ugly dispute with McStay, saying that McStay cut him out of some of the profits from the business. Dan Kavanaugh had sent angry messages to McStay, who responded, "We know what you would potentially do to harm me and my family."
This is a very contentious conversation. We need to look into this.
Despite that apparent bad blood between the 2, they remained in business together, and McStay was paying Kavanaugh his share of those profits. And investigators determined that Kavanaugh had an alibi. He was in Hawaii at the time of the family's disappearance.
Maybe by the grace of God, I had decided to take a surf trip out there.
So investigators clear Kavanaugh and turn their attention to the other man who worked closely with Joseph in the water fountain business.
Chase Merritt, he gets involved with Joseph building these custom waterfalls, which were much bigger projects, the kind of fountains you see at restaurants and hotels that have to be custom built.
Hi, welcome to your how-to video of installing your new water feature.
This is Chase Merritt in a video on YouTube promoting the water fountain business.
It's about to go on when I'm plugging it in.
Chase Merritt says he met Joseph at this Chick-fil-A before Joseph disappeared to discuss the business. Merritt even goes on TV to talk about that day.
In your gut, what do you think happened?
I have absolutely no clue.
The only real big interest we had in that was the parting shot he took.
You were the last person he saw.
I'm definitely the last person he saw.
He doubles down and says, I was absolutely the last person to see him alive.
It's definitely something that caught our interest.
Now that this is a homicide investigation, San Bernardino detectives can also request warrants, and so they're able to dig into the business's finances. They say there's evidence that Merritt was deeply in debt to Joseph McStay, pointing to this email that Merritt had provided to the San Diego detectives.
Investigators say it's essentially reminding Chase that he owes Joseph a shocking amount of money, $42,000. And this email was sent 3 days before the McStays disappeared.
The interesting thing is in an audit of Merritt's financials, he didn't have that $42,000.
We found that he was just horrible with his personal finances. He had a gambling issue where he would go to casinos and spend a lot of money.
Chase was terrible with money. We had a couple of boats for a while. We had jet skis. Like, we had things we didn't need.
Early on, investigators discovered Chase Merritt had a bit of a rap sheet. Turns out between 1977 and 2001, he had several arrests for burglary and petty theft.
Chase has never been violent with me. I've never seen him be violent. He's not psychotic in the sense that I feel like you could take somebody's life for, well, money.
As detectives continue to review evidence from the original investigation, they say they make a major breakthrough when they take another look at the family's Isuzu Trooper.
The San Diego Sheriff's Department processed it for evidence. They collected the DNA swabs. It's like, okay, we have it. Where is it going to take us?
It turns out that trace DNA found on the steering wheel and the gear shift belonged to Chase Merritt.
Chase Merritt told the initial investigators with San Diego that he never drove the family's Trooper.
Have you ever driven the white vehicle?
But nearly a year after the bodies are found,
Grab some of my other notes real quick.
San Bernardino detectives bring Merritt in for questioning, and they press him, and he changes his story. Now he says, yeah, he once drove the Trooper when he and Joseph went to play paintball before Joseph disappeared.
Detective Fisk asked you if you'd ever driven the Trooper, and you said no.
Actually, that isn't what I said, because I remember the conversation. The last time I had driven the Trooper was when we went paintballing, but it was 150 feet.
The fact that his DNA is now recovered off of an area where the driver would have touched, that's a red flag for us.
We believe he drove that down to the San Ysidro border.
For detectives, signs are pointing to Chase Merritt. But later, a woman comes forward.
Well, I think you guys have the wrong man.
Well, what she tells investigators convinced them they've got the wrong man.
Like, I have a full detailed confession from him.
It's gonna get a little bumpy, okay?
After the McStay family was found brutally murdered out here in the desert, the cops began zeroing in on Chase Merritt. And it turned out that he was very familiar with the Mojave Desert. He grew up around here.
Chase grew up in Hesperia, California. It was, pretty much the middle of nowhere. I actually met Chase at a country western bar. He can be off-putting, but he can also be charming. We share 3 children together. At least half of his family still live in the desert.
The area where Chase Merritt grew up would prove pivotal to the investigation. That's because detectives find that 2 days after the McStays disappear, Merritt's cell phone pinged off of that cell phone tower, which happens to overlook where the bodies were buried. And this is near where he used to live.
He's showing in the area where the graves are. That's a huge deal.
His phone comes on and it hits off the tower here in Victorville. We later find the graves, and we find the victims.
Quite a coincidence.
Pretty significant coincidence in our investigation.
He also has family in the area, so is there a reason that he was here? Or is he here because he's burying bodies?
So now, detectives ask Chase Merritt pointed questions about why his phone is pinging off those towers overlooking the graves.
Where'd you go February 6th?
I don't remember.
Why would your phone show you at the gravesite on February 6th?
Not possible. I wasn't there.
Why would your phone records show you there?
Couldn't have.
Oh, they do?
He couldn't have.
Chase Merritt repeatedly denies being near the gravesite.
It shows you out there, Chase. That's why I'm asking. I'm trying to help us figure this all out.
It's impossible.
Were the records wrong?
No, he pinged off those towers.
Did you plan to go down and kill these folks?
Of course not. Of course not. There's no reason for me to hurt them.
What were you doing in the desert then? If that's not you at the gravesite, what were you doing in the desert?
If I was in the desert, there's 2 places I would have been. Either my older sisters and/or grand, or my brother.
Chase Merritt talks with detectives for nearly 7 hours, continuing to deny that he was ever near the gravesite. And despite the evidence against him, he's ultimately allowed to leave, free to go. So why did you let him walk out of that interrogation room?
Well, at that point, there's still a lot of unanswered questions.
Could Merritt have been out there visiting his family in the desert? Investigators interview his sister, Juanita Merritt, to try to find out.
And Chase Merritt's sister, Juanita, lives basically on the other side of that mountain?
Yeah, she lives on the other side of the mountain out in a small little town area called Oro Grande. So during the interview, she did not provide him any alibi.
Chase, at that time, when he was with Joe, never came up here.
That's what I was going to ask. Can you remember it all?
He didn't even hardly visit. I can remember one time he visited.
About how long before?
In 5 years, I hadn't seen him.
And she was adamant that he wasn't out here at that time. His brother lived out in Hesperia, but didn't have any indication that he would have been up here visiting. There was no explanation as to, why he was there.
At what point did you decide to move in and make the arrest?
We believed we had enough to prove that he was the only person who had the means, the motive, and the opportunity to commit this crime. We presented it to the district attorney's office. They agreed. Then we went and got the warrant to go arrest him.
Chase felt like the police were eyeing him as a suspect. When he got arrested, it was kind of expected.
He didn't resist. We walked him into sheriff's headquarters and placed him in a holding cell.
The suspect is 57-year-old Charles Merritt.
I was in front of the courthouse for the arraignment. Chase Merritt is charged with 4 counts of murder.
I don't need to tell you that this is a cold and callous murder of an entire family.
We also heard from members of the McStay family, and after 3 years, the emotion is just pouring out.
I said I wasn't going to cry, but you have no idea what this means.
Merritt pleads not guilty to all 4 counts of murder, but it'll be more than 4 years before he has his day in court.
The case finally getting to trial 9 years after the McStay family disappeared.
Now, jurors prepare to hear some mind-blowing evidence.
Investigators also obtained a surveillance video.
But will this evidence help them win their case?
Why do you think this video is important? What do you think it shows?
Or will it sink it?
It's been nearly 9 years since the McStays disappeared, and now a reckoning. Chase Merritt is about to stand trial at this courthouse in San Bernardino in a case that has captivated the country and become a national mystery.
When the trial starts, all of us in the media are finally saying, now we're going to get some answers.
The family was brutally murdered. Today, opening statements start in San Bernardino from Merritt.
How does this family of 4 disappear off the face of the earth? Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence in this case will show you not only the how, but the why, and especially the who. And the who is sitting here in court today, Charles Merritt.
The prosecutor's theory of the case is that they believe Chase Merritt was being fired by Joseph McStay during what Merritt says was their final meeting together. Take me back to February 4th. Chase Merritt, Joseph McStay meet at a Chick-fil-A not far from where we are right now.
Allegedly, yes. We developed the theory that if there was a meeting at all, it was a very quick firing. The cell phone records show that Joseph went back home. It's later that Merritt's phone goes off the network for about 4.5 hours, and it's in the middle there where we believe Joseph and his family disappeared.
Disappeared or were murdered?
Murdered.
Chase Merritt's defense attorney says the claim that the murders happened inside the house, that's ludicrous.
The method of death, according to the prosecution, was by sledgehammer. Blood would be strewn everywhere. There was not one speck of blood found in the entire house.
Is there actually any evidence that they were murdered in that home?
No, unfortunately, there's no forensic evidence.
Like zero forensic evidence?
Zero forensic evidence, and we never contended that we could prove that.
Chase Merritt's attorney denies there was any animosity between Merritt and Joseph McStay.
What motive would Chase have to kill Joseph? Joseph and Chase literally adored each other. They had gotten contracts worth millions of dollars. These two were going to the moon, and neither one of them could have done it without the other.
Prosecutors, on the other hand, say there is a motive.
The why boils down to greed
and Greed's Child fraud.
Authorities allege that Merritt had a gambling problem and that he lost money. So they say he wrote checks from the water fountain business to himself and then tried to cover his tracks.
So these checks were on Joseph's business software. They were backdated to February 4th, and then they were deleted from the system. And that's important because we realized that nobody knew the family was missing yet. So why would someone delete it, backdating it to the 4th?
The defense maintains that Merritt had permission to write the checks, and they refute the claim that he had a gambling problem.
He wrote checks to himself to buy materials. That was a common practice. Checks were backdated routinely.
Moline also says that there's an innocent explanation for that email that allegedly showed that Merritt was tens of thousands of dollars in debt to Joseph McStay.
This was a running ledger. 1 month up, 1 month down. 1 month up, 1 month down. It was not a debt.
But you have to remember, they have some direct evidence as well. Chase Merritt's DNA is in that Isuzu Trooper.
We get DNA results that place him in the driver's side of that vehicle.
Prosecutors say it shows that Merritt was the one who drove the family's vehicle to the Mexico border.
The defense has an answer for this, that it could have been transfer DNA.
When I shake your hand and I go to touch a steering wheel, my DNA is going to be on the steering wheel.
And during the cross-examination of the state's own DNA expert, he doesn't rule out that possibility.
Would it be reasonable for you to conclude that this could be secondary transfer DNA in the vehicle?
It is a possible explanation for that observation.
Is it a reasonable one?
I believe it is reasonable, yes, sir.
San Diego investigators also obtained a surveillance video from the neighbor across the street.
In a key moment for the prosecution, they played this surveillance video for the jury that shows a vehicle leaving the McStay's house the evening they went missing.
As you start to analyze the video and you take a closer look at it, you can see with the naked eye that there's a low-hanging tailpipe. Well, the trooper did not have an exhaust pipe on the passenger side. The exhaust pipe was on the driver's side.
Prosecutors contend the video that actually shows Chase Merritt's truck, and they argue that it places him at the scene of the crime. How do you actually know that's Merritt's vehicle?
It had characteristics consistent with being Merritt's truck, including the shadows that are cast by the brake lights, the height, width, and placement of the headlights.
But the centerpiece of the prosecution's case is when an FBI cell phone expert testifies that Merritt's phone was pinging in the area of the desert where the McStays were buried.
The cell phone can give you, from an historical perspective, it can give you a general location of where somebody has been.
I heard their expert testify that I can't place Chase's phone near the gravesite. He's in the general area, the best he could do. That doesn't sound like certainty to me.
Our expert never claimed to have been able to what's called geolocate the user of a device based on the technology and data that was available from 2010 records. All we know is that his phone pinged on the 6th on a tower that overlooked the gravesite.
Remember, Merritt says he could have been at his sister Juanita's house when his phone pinged in the desert.
But she originally told detectives that she hadn't seen him in 5 years.
Didn't even hardly visit.
So, I mean,
in 5 years, I hadn't seen him.
And when they call Juanita Merritt in to testify, prosecutors are in for an unpleasant surprise.
How often do you think that you would see your brother around that time frame?
I saw him quite often.
Do you remember telling the detective that you hadn't seen him probably for about 5 years?
No.
Juanita changes her story on the stand.
She claimed that he had been up there, but her memory was really fuzzy because she had had surgery and was heavily medicated.
Was that harmful to the case?
We had her prior statement.
The interview that Juanita and I had was all recorded, and that was able to kind of disprove her assertion.
After nearly 9 weeks, the state rests, and the prosecution leaves the jury with one parting shot. That clip of Chase Merritt's TV interview.
I'm definitely the last person he saw.
We ended with that because it is the most poignant statement to emphasize to the jury. Even he believes he was the last person to see him alive.
Now it's the defense's turn.
Let's do it.
And they try to flip the case on its head by saying not only did the cops have the wrong guy, they point the finger at the person they allege is the real culprit.
It was just like, oh boy, what are they gonna pull out of their back pocket?
2 months into the murder trial of Charles Chase Merritt, the defense now gets to present its case to the jury.
When we see the McStay family, we see, victims. We do. And we want justice for them as well.
As the defense begins, it has one clear message for the jury. The prosecution has got the wrong man.
And that's what this whole investigation is. We want Chase Merritt. So let's just do gymnastics with logic and figure out how do we build a case against him.
Did you ever believe that Chase Merritt was guilty?
Not for a second.
Not for a second?
Not for a second.
You never had a moment of doubt?
Never. I don't know who did it, but certainly the evidence points to other people other than Chase.
That evidence that the defense has is actually DNA recovered from the burial site.
In our investigation, we were able to get 3 DNA profiles from the material that tied up Joseph and from the bra of Summer McStay.
The defense was making the argument that the DNA evidence that they had collected from the gravesite did not match Chase Merritt, that in fact it matched someone else.
Apparently, Chase killed this family, buried them, and put someone else's DNA on everything, and not his own.
There was no DNA of other individuals found at those
So
gravesites.
whose DNA was found at the gravesite?
Nobody's. It's just a total misrepresentation of what the science is.
Prosecutors claim there wasn't enough DNA for a full, scientifically valid profile that would either allow testing that would exclude Chase Merritt or lead to anyone else. But the defense disagrees. They claim the authorities just didn't look at other suspects seriously enough.
They failed to look at Dan Kavanaugh.
And in particular, the other person in business with Joseph McStay.
I mean, he had nothing else to defend the guy with. There was a pile of evidence that he did it. So then the defense is like, well, this other guy did it though.
But the defense claims there is plenty of evidence against Dan Kavanaugh, starting with a shocking new allegation raised by a woman named Tracy Riccobene, who, accompanied by her dog, came forward to authorities. So who is Tracy Riccobene?
That was just a friend that I met from another friend, literally a platonic friend.
Prosecutors say that Riccobene had contacted them after the trial was already underway, claiming that Kavanaugh had confessed to her about the murders.
When did that full confession come out?
Maybe 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
But investigators say what sounded like it could have been significant.
Like, I have a full detailed confession from him, if you want to know exactly how he did it.
Turned out not to be.
None of the things she said caused Kavanaugh's alibi to come into question. We knew Kavanaugh was in Hawaii.
Did you ever confess anything to her?
No, that's a joke.
But the defense is still willing to go for a Hail Mary in court.
And then lo and behold, October of 2018, Tracy Riccobene gives a statement. And what she says is Dan Kavanaugh confessed to her that he killed the McStay family.
Even though the defense tells the jury about Tracy Riccobene, they ultimately decide not to introduce her police interview tape into evidence or even to call her to testify. Now, the judge also strictly limits what allegations the defense can raise against Dan Kavanaugh, who is neither accused nor on trial.
Remember those threatening messages that Dan Kavanaugh sent to Joseph McStay? Not allowed. But the jury can hear about the financial transactions that Kavanaugh made after the family went missing.
Dan Kavanaugh, despite having a relationship with Joseph for many years, had never gone into his account and taken money himself.
The defense wants the jury to believe this is evidence of financial motive for Kavanaugh to kill McStay.
Do you know what the total amount that Dan Kavanaugh took in?
In total, the income was $206,000.
That money includes the almost $7,000 Kavanaugh transferred out of the company's PayPal account that he said he needed to keep the business going, as well as his proceeds from selling the company a year and a half after Joseph went missing.
And that money went into Kavanaugh's account.
That's correct.
The only way he would do that is he knew Joseph wasn't coming back. He sold Earth-inspired products. He sold it and got the money.
There is no evidence, no credible, reliable, corroborated evidence to justify pointing the finger at Dan Kavanaugh.
The prosecution dismisses the defense's financial arguments and, in fact, its entire effort to blame Dan Kavanaugh, because he had that alibi.
The problem with attempting to say that Dan Kavanaugh was the killer was that we had very concrete proof that Dan Kavanaugh was nowhere near San Diego at the time of the disappearance. Dan Kavanaugh was actually in Hawaii when they disappeared.
But at trial, the defense challenges Kavanaugh's alibi. They claim there's no definitive proof of a trip.
The best they were able to do is present a plane ticket that he purchased. Doesn't mean he flew. It means he purchased. Show me that he got on a plane. Where?
They got a verbal confirmation that that ticket was used.
To further counter the defense's claim, prosecutors call a rebuttal witness, Kavanaugh's girlfriend at that time, Laura Knowles.
At any point during that relationship, did you and Mr. Kavanaugh travel? What?
Yes.
You recall when you returned?
February, middle of February.
His girlfriend was with him and posting pictures of all of them from Hawaii on her Facebook page.
But the defense offers something else for the jury to consider. They claim Chase Merritt has an alibi of his own.
According to the prosecution, the family was dead before 8 p.m. How could he call Chase at 8:28 p.m.? Doesn't make sense.
So far, the defense is trying to show someone else could have conceivably killed the McStay family. But now they try to show Chase Merritt could absolutely not have done it.
At some point, did Chase come home?
Yes.
By arguing, as Chase Merritt's former girlfriend, Kathy Jarvis, testifies, that he was at home the night of the murder.
Now, was there a phone call that Chase received in the evening hours?
Yes.
And do you know who the call was from?
Yes.
Who?
Joseph.
This is an absolutely critical moment in the trial because Jarvis is testifying that Chase got a phone call from Joseph McStay just as prosecutors say Joseph McStay is being murdered.
According to the prosecution, the family was dead before 8 p.m. How could he call Chase at 8:28 p.m.? Doesn't make sense.
It became a very emotional recollection. What if you were the one he was reaching out to save him and you didn't answer the phone, you know?
But prosecutors don't buy it. They maintain Chase Merritt called himself using Joseph McStay's phone.
The nefarious explanation is he attempted to create an alibi by doing that.
They're making it seem like because I love him so much, I'm gonna lie for him. I told the truth, and they twisted the truth into something that fit their narrative.
The defense continuously attacks the prosecution, and in perhaps the most contentious moment of the case, they accuse prosecutor Britt Imes of withholding evidence they allege he knew could help clear Merritt.
Defense called Dr. Leonard Rudin.
It had to do with this witness, Dr. Leonard Rudin, and he's one of the world's leading forensic video experts, called by the defense to testify about that critical piece of evidence, the home surveillance footage of that truck.
I'm not sure whose witness I am at this point, but at some point I was prosecution witness.
Now, remember, prosecutors contend that was Chase Merritt's truck, and originally they were going to call Dr. Rudin to support that, until he changed his mind.
They're cherry-picking their evidence.
So now, outside the presence of the jury, the defense tries to convince the judge the prosecution did not turn over Dr. Rudin's key findings.
We are requesting this for all departments.
I relayed the general understanding of what I had. The defense had it. They communicated with the witness. It really was, we want our case dismissed, is what they wanted.
But after the whole thing is over, the judge makes his ruling and he sides with the prosecution.
There was no suppression of evidence and no prejudice.
So it baffled my mind that they would stoop to that level to accuse me of misconduct.
But the jury, they're unaware of all of this. And Dr. Rudin is now testifying, but for the defense. And what he says is one of the biggest moments for the defense. He can't conclude that the truck in the video matches Chase Merritt's truck.
Based on the data I have and all the methods that I have available to me now, I render a rejection.
We clearly were able to show Chase's truck was excluded.
So it's on to closing arguments.
A dramatic open to closing arguments in the murder trial of Charles Merritt.
It was blow after blow after blow to a child's skull, a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old.
Where the prosecution insists there's no question Merritt's guilty. But the defense says there is so much reasonable doubt the jury must acquit.
So when you return a verdict of not guilty, you sleep at night going, yeah, they got the wrong guy.
When that jury went out, it's still nerve-wracking. As seasoned prosecutors, you still get worried.
Those deliberations drag on day after day.
The longer you're in deliberations, the longer it is to think about the family, especially the 2 little kids. That can't be good.
And then, after 6 long days, jurors finally agree.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Charles Ray Merritt, guilty of the offense of murder in the first degree.
Merritt hung his head as he was found guilty on 4 counts of first-degree murder. There were audible gasps of no and thank God heard in the gallery.
But that verdict isn't the end of Chase Merritt's story. When I talk to him, he tells me there's more the jury didn't hear.
Lots of drama unfolding in the sentencing phase for a man who used a sledgehammer to kill a Fallbrook family.
Charles Merritt is facing the death penalty or life in prison.
So the day has come. It's time for sentencing. But the defense has one last-ditch effort up their sleeve. They file a motion for a new trial.
Merritt's attorney, Raj Moline, comes forward with a bombshell claim. Critical testimony that he says could have helped prove that Chase Merritt's innocence was not presented at trial.
Well, we believe that Mr. Merritt should have a new trial, Your Honor, especially considering cell tower evidence. That would have had a tremendous impact on what the outcome would have been in this case.
The cell tower evidence was really important to the prosecution's case, but Moline tells the court that the defense failed to call a key witness, an expert in cell tower analysis.
And so that was evidence that should have been included in the
According to Moline, that expert would have testified that the prosecution's analysis of the phone records was seriously flawed, and he would have shown that Merritt was never at the gravesite.
Merritt was livid that he was never called to testify. He wanted the jury to hear that, and they didn't get to.
Ultimately, it's a big loss for the defense. The judge shoots down the request for a new trial.
And then comes the sentencing, where members of the McStay family give victim impact statements.
You deserve to pay for what you did to Joey, Summer, Gianni, and Chubba. You deserve to suffer like my family and Summer's family has suffered.
Chase Merritt decides he has some words.
I love Joseph. He was a big part of my life. I would never have hurt him in any way. I would never raise my hand to a woman or child. I did not do this thing.
The moment of truth is finally here as the judge imposes his sentence.
It is therefore the judgment and sentence of this court that the defendant, Charles Merritt, be sentenced to death.
I personally am happy with the verdict. I think it was correct and fair. He got a fair trial, and the jury spoke.
I think I felt really angry when they sentenced him to death. This is such a travesty. It doesn't make sense.
Today, Chase Merritt is behind bars at the Richard J. Donovan Correctional Facility in San Diego. He is 68 years old. Chase.
Hey.
Hi. Merritt tells us he's currently preparing what's known as a habeas petition to try to prove his innocence. In a video call from prison, he detailed the main points he says he plans to raise in his petition.
Phone tower evidence, most definitely, is one of the biggest things. Prosecutorial misconduct, abuse of discretion, judicial error, ineffective assistance of counsel.
How important do you think was it that the defense decided not to put on your cell phone tower witness on the stand?
I would almost certainly have been exonerated had he been on the stand. That's how important it was.
Do you think that you got inadequate counsel?
Most absolutely. Their ineffectiveness cannot be understated. If I were on that jury, I would have voted guilty.
Did you murder that family?
Didn't murder that family. I am innocent. And I will be out one day.
And as for Dan Kavanaugh, he says the allegations leveled at him by the defense during Merritt's trial ruined his life, with people continuing to accuse him of being involved in the murders, even though authorities had fully cleared him.
It's just too much stress, and they're dragging your name through the dirt, mucking up your name. So that sucks.
Kavanaugh says he retreated to the place he'd been when the McStays were killed, Hawaii. He says as part of the healing process, he started a new wellness venture.
This opportunity is like a second lease on life. It's like a second chance at business.
Despite the acrimony that developed between him and Joseph McStay, today Kavanaugh says he remembers the way it was when they were surf buddies.
I mean, I wish he was still around today, and I wish he was able to go surf with me, chill, play guitar, hang out.
I think Joey will be remembered just as that mellow guy. He's got his kids, he's got the beach, he's got a nice business. He was right where he needed to be.
Out there in the Mojave Desert, a memorial still marks the place where the McStays were found. And it's a reminder of all that has been lost, but their memories live on with the people who love them.
I am grateful to know that we did find Summer and Joseph and the boys' bodies, and they did go as a family.
Taking a cruise on the beach.
And when I picture them, I picture them at the beach playing in the sand.
I'm having so much fun.
Joey surfing, the sun is out. You know, they have their bicycles.
Two young women both brutally murdered in their homes. The killers in each case evading police for decades. In one case, a mother just 19 years old, she was engaged to be married.
Her fiance, who was about to marry her, adopt her daughter, he gets home and he immediately notices something is wrong. There's blood smeared on the stairway.
The killer had attacked her in the bedroom.
There was handprints of her trying to hold the door closed, and she just wasn't strong enough.
Another case in Texas, a beloved teacher, her whole future ahead of her.
Drove in to Memphis.
She just started a new school. She was loving teaching her students. She was in a very good place.
911, what's your emergency? What's going on? Oh, been murdered. What did your daughter do? She's been murdered!
You remember walking in and what you discovered?
I remember walking into the bathroom and seeing her body on the floor.
She'd been handcuffed.
That's correct. She had been handcuffed with her hands behind her back.
There were about 36 different wounds on her body. She put up a fight.
Of course, the question, who would want to kill each of these women? The mystery behind their murders would torment their loved ones for decades.
They've got handprints, they've got footprints. Why are they not finding this person?
It was like the talk of the town forever.
And for the detectives who were working these cases, frustrating dead ends.
There was also a suspicion, could it have been a member of law enforcement?
Right, there was no forced entry, so our speculation was that it was somebody that she knew or somebody that presented a position of authority that could have garnered that trust to get inside the apartment.
All of these questions lasted for years and years.
Yes. Yes.
Both of these brutal murders were cold cases for decades. And what links both of those cases all of these years later is the cutting-edge forensic technology inside this lab. Tonight, you'll see it unfold right here as they unmask the killer in both cases.
It's the first week of December 1988. 19-year-old Kathy Swartz is home with her 9-month-old daughter. In Kathy's living room, a tree decorated and ready for the first Christmas for her little baby.
She was living with Mike Warner. They were, setting up their life, although he wasn't the father of the child. They were a couple and they were trying to make their way.
He definitely came in and kind of was her knight in shining armor. They were a happy little family.
Mike got up around 5:30 in the morning for his job.
He gets home at 3:30 and he immediately notices something is wrong.
Things were in disarray. Blood up the banister, and then in the bedroom was Kathy, very bloody, unclothed mostly.
He would later describe it as like the walls were painted with blood.
Mike is so distressed he immediately runs to a neighboring apartment because he can't bring himself to call the police. Mike does go back into the apartment to find her daughter.
Kathy's baby, who's 9 months old, dressed in pants, a shirt. She has one sock on. Her diaper looks like it's been recently changed. She was standing up in the crib when Mike walked in.
This is that baby left standing alone in that crib all those years ago. She's now 36 years old.
How was your mother described to you?
Beautiful, happy-go-lucky. She did love like AC/DC, Metallica. She was like a little rock and roll girl. And everybody tells me that I was like her whole world.
So you were 16 years old when you read the police report.
Mm-hmm. It was awful for somebody to do what they did to her, knowing I was in the crib right next door. I just couldn't believe that somebody could do that.
So detectives had questioned at the time whether or not this suspect had changed the diaper.
Yeah. When the police got there on scene, I was dry. I didn't have a dirty diaper on, and it was some hours I was alone.
So one of the first things that investigators notice is that there doesn't seem to be any sign of forced entry, which again suggests that she knew the person who came in and killed her.
She was very good about locking her doors. I would call her and I would say, hey, I'm gonna come over. And I would go to her door, it was locked, and I would knock, and she would, who is it? And then she would let me in.
We theorize that the assault started in the kitchen because in the kitchen there was passive blood drops on the floor. And then the smearing goes up the stairway to the upstairs bedroom.
There are defensive wounds found on her hands. Her throat has been cut in multiple places. She's been strangled.
She fought like hell. She was trying to protect her daughter, and she did.
And the idea that this happened and you were just a couple of feet away.
Yeah. Makes me mad that I wasn't old enough to help her. I'm 100% convinced she was trying to save her baby. Because I feel like she would have just ran outside and yelled, but I was upstairs. And she wasn't going to leave that apartment without me.
In the bedroom where Kathy was found is a phone on the bed. The phone cord was cut, but on the phone there was Kathy's fingerprints, and then there was also an unknown fingerprint in blood. In '88, obviously, DNA was in its infancy.
The fingerprint on the phone, how significant?
Very significant, because they were in actual blood, and it was not my mom's.
There is a bloody footprint in the bathroom. It looks like the suspect took a shower after the murder to try to maybe wipe the blood off, clean up. But in the process of doing so, he left behind a left footprint, size 9, in blood.
And then the person left without being seen and without being discovered.
It was very unsettling that something like that could happen. It just didn't make any sense. None of it made any sense.
But when crime scene investigators pass through that gruesome scene again, this time with a new forensic light source, they find a new clue, and one that was imperceptible to the naked eye.
It was like a great big neon clue. It's like, holy smokes.
South Lanes is a bowling alley in Three Rivers, Michigan. It's the social epicenter of this small town where Kathy Swartz's father ran the pro shop. After her brutal murder back in 1988, it also became a place that connected Kathy's daughter, Courtney, to her mother.
I grew up in the bowling alley. I spent a lot of time there. I was raised by my grandparents. They tried to fill the void as much as they could.
What were you told about your mother's absence when you were a little girl?
About first grade, they had told me that a bad man had hurt my mom and she was up in heaven. And when it would thunderstorm, they would tell me that that was my mom up in heaven bowling a strike. So it was pretty cool watching the thunderstorms as I was little, because I'm like, oh, she must be bowling pretty good today.
Your mother's best friend, Jennifer, has told you a lot about your mom.
Yes, she has.
Kathy and I were very good friends. I've known her since grade school, so we've been friends a long time. Kathy was like somebody you could count on. She was a good listener, always there for you, just a, good person.
Childhood friends Kathy and Jennifer both found themselves pregnant as teenagers and formed an unbreakable bond. They would talk on the phone several times a day until December 2nd, when Jennifer couldn't get a hold of her best friend.
A police officer came to my apartment, and he asked me to go to the station. I remember him asking me questions, do you know anybody that would want to hurt Kathy? Along those lines. And I finally just was like, what's going on? Is Kathy okay? And he told me, and I don't even remember. I know that the first thing out of my mouth was, is Courtney okay? Where is Courtney?
I do remember pictures of our first Christmas tree, and she had presents under there for me, but she never got to give them to me.
We can see it's the pain you still carry with you. They were a young family just starting out. Kathy and Mike Warner had only been engaged about 3 weeks before her brutal death. And since he was the one who found her body, of course, police would have a lot of questions for him.
When the police initially interviewed him, he had this kind of flat affect to his voice. He didn't seem to be all that upset that she was dead. He didn't get emotional, and that seemed very suspicious to police.
I can't imagine, walking into that scene and what that does to somebody.
There was polygraph examinations that were done with. We were able to verify that he was at work in Sturgis all day long, and there was no way he could have came back to Three Rivers to do it.
I had no doubt in my mind that he didn't have anything to do with this. And I knew it in my heart. No, he loved her. She and Courtney were his world.
I go by Judge Jeffrey Middleton now, but at the time of this, I was Chief Assistant Prosecuting Attorney. We would have maybe one homicide a year, not a young woman killed alone in her apartment during broad daylight. At that point, they were leaving no stone unturned.
So the police department actually rented the apartment for a month after the crime, just so that we could return and continue to look for clues and process. This is one of the first cases where they deployed alternative light sources.
They went into the crime scene with a black light.
On the refrigerator, they noticed 2 pieces of writing. Metallica was written on the refrigerator, and Harley was here. These were inexplicable writings that apparently had been erased.
And we found that someone had written on her body, probably in magic marker on the inside of her thigh, and said, "I was here," with an arrow pointing up toward her groin. That was not visible to the naked eye.
And when detectives speak to Kathy's friends, they hear about an ex-boyfriend named Troy Schultes. It turns out he had a nickname, Harley, which of course got their attention. He was a huge fan of the band Metallica.
In fact, he has a Harley-Davidson decal on his truck. The truck was spotted outside Kathy's apartment that very afternoon of her murder.
Well, that's who I told him to look at and, to question. I know a lot of other people did too. I don't know how to really describe it, but it was not a good they were not good together.
You know, when they further look into him, he doesn't have an alibi for that afternoon. So he immediately becomes their number one suspect. They pick him up for questioning.
Troy Schultes admitted that he was the one that wrote on the refrigerator and on the wall in the apartment, but he never admitted to writing it on her thigh.
And he said, well, I didn't do it.
And still with no solid alibi for the night of the murder, police zero in on Troy.
I thought, that's got to be it. Because again, it's got to be somebody she knew, somebody she trusted.
And before long, an arrest in the Kathy Swartz case is announced. But if investigators think they've got their guy, a rude awakening is ahead. Kathy Swartz's daughter, Courtney, the baby left standing in her crib after her mother was brutally murdered, is a mother herself now.
Why are you breaking everything?
And she and her 4 children have stayed in Three Rivers, Michigan, finding comfort in a mother that she lost when she was just a baby.
I do bring the kids out here for like holidays, her birthday, but I also do come out here a lot by myself too.
Back in 1988, police believed they found the perpetrator who brutally murdered Courtney's mother, the man whose nickname was scrawled across her refrigerator, her ex-boyfriend, Troy Schultes.
You know, you look at that and you think, well, that's somebody leaving a calling card behind that they were there.
Without any kind of solid alibi and now under a cloud of suspicion, Troy is arrested, he's charged, and he pleads not guilty.
We had the fingerprints, but we also had a sample of blood that was left behind. We believe because Kathy fought back that whoever the killer was had sustained an injury, and Troy's blood type did not match.
They take fingerprints and footprints from him, and those prints also do not match.
So the charges were dismissed. As it turns out, he was wrongfully arrested and wrongfully charged.
So with the investigation now back at square one, the Three Rivers Police Department, they refocused on matching the fingerprint and the footprint found at the crime scene to the killer.
We had fingerprinted and footprinted so many individuals that had been living in Three Rivers at that time, and none of them were a match.
I thought we would solve this quickly. So the first month passed, we didn't know, 3 months passed, a year passed, and it wasn't solved.
Police even looked at similar crimes that had taken place elsewhere in the area. They took fingerprints, footprints. There was no match.
And the case got colder and colder.
And as DNA technology improves, law enforcement, they continue to work the case.
We fast forward to 2012. We're going over the evidence again. The fingerprint that they had found on the phone was in the suspect's blood, and it was still in viable condition to obtain a DNA profile from that. And we enter it into CODIS. We think that's going to give us a hit. And of course, it doesn't.
As the years continue to pass, the mystery and the collateral damage for this whole community only grew. The town was haunted by this. Did you feel the eyes of the town on you as you were growing up?
Yes. And I was the baby, so like everybody wanted to take care of the baby, and you know, like it's still that way.
When you don't have answers, you just have questions all the time. But it definitely changed me. It really changed me. I slept with a machete under my mattress for years.
So every December 2nd represents another year without justice for Courtney and her grandparents.
Today, the family is together remembering Kathy on the anniversary of her death.
It's hard. Real hard.
I felt a certain point that I wasn't sure that they would ever find out.
Probably right there, before she died.
It's been 25 years, but remembering hasn't gotten any easier for David Swartz.
I think, probably the worst thing for me is the why. Why? Why did it have to happen like something like that?
When you look at these kinds of cases around the country, there is generally an investigator or a detective who never gives up.
Yes.
And in this case, it was Jeffrey Middleton.
Yes. He is a great guy.
What was it, do you think, that kept him going on this case for so long?
He was young, just starting out, and this was really the only cold case in our town.
I spent more time on this case than any other case in my entire career. Sometimes in later years, I would pretend I was on vacation and lock myself in the library and just go through this file. As Courtney got older, she would call me sometimes and ask if I knew anything, and I never had any answers.
Police have DNA, fingerprints, and a lot of physical evidence. What they don't have is the person who murdered a 19-year-old Three Rivers woman in 1988.
Here's a lot of the evidence right from property.
Eventually, the Three Rivers Police Department decided to partner with the Michigan State Police. They're convinced that with advances in DNA testing technology, that the Kathy Swartz case can finally be solved.
In Kathy's case, we had DNA that was in CODIS, and we had not gotten a match. We'd exhausted, the fingerprints, and these things which normally get us a hit did not. So I honestly felt like the genetic genealogy was our only chance for solving this case.
And then 3 years ago, Othram, a forensics lab in Texas, now enters the picture. Promising something everyone close to the Kathy Swartz case has waited decades for: answers.
Othram uses DNA technology to help identify victims and perpetrators when law enforcement cannot.
They knew that it was an unknown male contributor to that DNA, but they didn't know who it was.
But all these years later, they said, well, look at this and see if there's something you can do with it. And you were convinced you could?
We were absolutely certain that we could help the Michigan State Police work this case.
They said, we'll get you a lead back. We're not going to guarantee that it's the lead, but we'll get you a lead.
They had over 1,000 suspects. All of a sudden, it's narrowed down to 4.
It was our breakthrough.
In 2022, a package containing DNA, that single bloody fingerprint from Kathy Swartz's pink phone, arrives right here at this building just north of Houston. To the outsider, it looks like just another office building, but what's actually happening inside, in these labs, is now changing how investigations across this country are being solved. This is the headquarters of Othram, a cutting-edge forensics lab that's been mentioned in some of today's most talked about criminal investigations. And Othram has been credited by law enforcement with helping to solve cases that have been unsolvable for years now. How are you?
Hi, it's good to see you.
Good to see you.
How are you?
Yeah,
Thank you. Welcome to Othram.
David and Kristen Middleman are the husband and wife team behind all of this.
Everything you see on our right side will be forensic. Everything you see on the left side will be research. Not every case is suitable for DNA testing right now. Burnt remains, exploded remains, really difficult to make sure. But we hope that one day we live in a world where every case can be suitable for DNA testing.
So you'll hold on to remains for a while and keep trying.
We don't give up ever.
The Middleman's partnership, both in work and in life, actually began over a few blind mice. It's the year 2000. You've just started your PhD at Baylor. You're doing a study on mice.
I was.
And there was another young scientist.
David, yep. So our projects collided, and he actually cured my blind mice. So I thought, wow, if this guy can do that, I think I'll marry him.
David Middleman had worked in biomedical research for years before realizing that law enforcement was relying on a limited form of DNA testing. He knew that better technology was available, but said it just wasn't being widely used out there.
It sounded like science fiction at the time. This way you could take decades-old DNA, put it into a genealogy database, build a family tree for your suspect, and then that takes you right to his door. That was pretty amazing.
You start to think, wow, this is really an unused tool here for law enforcement.
Yeah, it felt wrong that there were tools available, and yet there was this piling up backlog of cases that were unsolved.
So at one point, you turn to Kristen and you say, I want to start my own lab.
His words were, let's build a forensic lab of the future. And my words were, what? Who's going to give you evidence?
You thought from the very beginning, who's going to trust us with this?
100%. I said, I don't think people will come. And he said, well, I'm going to build it and we're going to see.
Within a year, he was solving cases almost every week. And the more cold cases they closed, the more publicity they got. And police departments around the world started sending them cases. It's just grown exponentially. In terms of publicly announced solves, Othram is #1 in the world. That includes homicides, rapes, unidentified bodies that they've been able to give names to.
And Othram's reputation now for cracking these cold cases using DNA evidence and forensic genetic genealogy is what actually led Michigan detectives to send that 30-year-old DNA to this lab.
In the Kathy Swartz case, this DNA was how old when it got here from that pink phone?
It was decades old, and in spite of being so old, the DNA was still intact and usable for testing.
So you knew right away this was suitable, and this was just his DNA, the suspect's.
Yeah, the DNA was a single unknown male contributor. It's a small sample, but in spite of that, there's anywhere from hundreds to thousands of cells worth of DNA.
So if you touch David's hand, how much DNA, how many cells have you left there?
Hundreds of cells.
Hundreds of cells on his hand, and sometimes you're dealing with 10, 15.
Even less.
From years ago.
Yeah.
And still able to solve the case.
It's a very, very sensitive technology.
In this Kathy Swartz case, you've chemically labeled all the different parts of the DNA in this room right here, and what do you do with it from there?
It is now ready to actually be read. This particular DNA sequencer is one of the most powerful sequencers
This
on
here
Earth.
with the green?
Yes.
Give me a comparison to what authorities used to have to deal with. What would the DNA sequence reveal versus what you can reveal with the DNA sequencing from this machine now?
Sure. So for the last 30 years, people have used a different kind of DNA testing technology that can measure 20 data points in the DNA. This machine actually can read out the entire sequence. So whereas you might get 20 data points in the earlier versions of this technology, this machine could give you anywhere from 100,000 to 1 million data points.
100,000 to 1 million?
100,000 to 1 million data points.
So now that you have this sequencing that they just didn't have access to years ago, in this particular case, for example, what do you then do with that?
So with the data file that comes out that might have 100,000 to 1 million DNA markers, you can do a lot more, including genetic genealogy and that search for distant relatives.
You're taking what in many cases is a very old DNA sample from these cold cases. You're expanding the DNA sequence, but you're also able to take that information now and put it up against vast public data now, because families and relatives and third cousins and fourth cousins have put all of this information out there, and it would seem that this might unlock cold cases everywhere.
Correct.
At that point, Autherm's in-house genealogy team takes over to build a family tree for the suspected killer of Kathy Swartz.
These types of crimes going unsolved have a ripple effect across society, not just the victim and the family not having answers, but the law enforcement that worked the case for decades, consumed by a case they can't solve.
Finding those investigators and then gaining their trust is what Autherm says has been critical to their success in helping to crack these cases.
In those early years, you have no background in law enforcement. Are you essentially making cold calls to police stations?
I spent my time almost exclusively talking to law enforcement.
You live in Texas, and you know if you want to land a case in Texas, you got to get to the Texas Rangers. But how did you convince them that we've got a tool here?
Well, the one that I've done the most work with is Ranger Brandon Bess.
Brandon Bess is almost out of central casting for a Texas Ranger. He's this imposing man with his white hat. When David Middleman founded Autherm, nobody had heard of them. And when Bess visited in 2019, he was really kind of taken aback.
David walks in this room, and it's to speak to David's confidence in that he's wearing a t-shirt that's about 2 sizes too small. He's wearing jeans that have holes in them. It looks like he hadn't slept in 14 days. His hair standing up. I have instant respect for him because I can tell this is a guy that doesn't give up.
Bess came away impressed. He heard about the opportunity to solve a cold case, and he thought, let's team up.
And he had one case in mind. They told me it was the most heinous thing that had ever happened that was unsolved in Beaumont.
That other case, that young school teacher, 31-year-old Catherine Edwards.
911, what's your emergency? Get me the police, please.
What was unique about this case?
The victim was a school teacher, well liked by everyone. And there was no sign of forced entry. So it's a very odd situation. It didn't add up.
This is a crime of violence, a crime of passion, a crime of control.
It gives you chills even today.
Even today, yes, even today.
Either it was someone that she knew or someone that presented themselves as an officer. It was almost like whispered in the hallways, it could be one of our own.
So on January 14th, 1995, the Beaumont Police Department gets a 911 call from a man at a townhouse in West Beaumont.
Oh, Jesus! 911, what's your emergency? Get me the police, please.
He had found his daughter in the second floor bathroom, slumped over the tub.
Okay, ma'am, what's going on there? Our daughter has been murdered. Okay, what happened, ma'am? We came over here and found her. She's handcuffed. She's been tortured. Please send someone. We're sending someone. Don't hang up, all right? Okay, is there anyone else in the house? My husband is here with me. Okay. We found her.
That woman was Catherine Edwards, and she's a teacher at a local elementary school.
She was supposed to have plans with her sister and family for lunch. When she didn't respond by phone call, they went by her house and found that her car was still there. Got inside the house with a key.
Her father said he grabbed her and pulled her over and rolled her over to look and see if there's anything he could do. He was crying hysterically.
Please, send an ambulance.
To listen to the emotion in those calls, you know, just gut-wrenching. In my 30-plus years, I'd never heard anything like it.
Dad covers her with a towel. Police show up. There's one officer by the name of Carmen Brown. She shows up first, and she secures the crime scene.
And that officer, Carmen Brown Apple, says the memory of her entering Catherine Edwards' townhouse has played over and over again in her mind for decades. You remember walking in and what you discovered?
I remember walking in and going up the stairs, looking first into the bedroom that was very much in disarray.
What did you find as far as the bedroom and the bathroom?
Bedroom, there was looked like there had been some type of tussle in there. Things had been knocked around. Sheets were partially torn off. A portion of the bedpost had come off. And then walking into the bathroom and seeing her body on the floor.
She'd been handcuffed.
That's correct. She had been handcuffed with her hands behind her back.
When her mother said her name,
Yes,
you thought, I know her.
I know her. I went to college with her. We were in sororities together. She was so full of life and so friendly and so nice. That just always stuck with me. To come to the scene and then suddenly realize it was Mary Catherine, it just knocked me for a minute.
It gives you chills even today.
Even today, yes, even today.
She is not your typical victim by any stretch of the circumstance. It was an extremely unusual case.
Catherine and her twin sister Allison grew up in Beaumont. They're part of a close-knit Presbyterian family. They both attended Forest Park High School and then Lamar University, which is in Beaumont. And they both became school teachers at the Beaumont Independent School District. Catherine and her sister were extremely close.
When you talk about Mary Catherine and talk about Allison and look at them, I mean, they are identical twins. You can't tell them apart. They both had students come up to each other in the grocery store thinking they were the other twin.
Investigators learned that her sister Allison was likely the last person, aside from the killer obviously, to see Catherine alive. Allison would tell detectives that her twin sister arrived at her house after work to pick up her beloved beagle, Maggie.
She came by, visited with her sister, went home. From what we can tell, she had had a glass of wine and just kind of was relaxing and about to go to bed. And I think the last time she was heard from was about 8 o'clock that night.
One of the neighbors told police that he heard someone clomping down the stairs overnight on the night of January 13th.
There was a 12-year-old boy and his dad that were staying with some friends that were right next door to Catherine Edwards' townhome. He heard somebody run down the stairs and then a door slam, and a little while later a car sped off with loud music. There were some other neighbors that heard some loud banging.
It lasted for 60 to 90 seconds. And they said they never heard a scream, so they just figured that something else might have been going on. They had no idea that there was a murder taking place next door.
Crime scene investigators found that there was no sign of forced entry, which is significant because it either meant that Catherine had kept her door unlocked or had potentially recognized her killer and let him in.
Of course, in these cases, it's standard procedure for investigators to look at those closest to the victim. And really, from the beginning, her ex-boyfriend is seen as a prime suspect. But critical evidence from the scene actually points in a different direction.
The crime scene investigators at the time also collected a lot of evidence from the house, and one of those pieces of evidence being the bedspread.
Investigators found semen on Catherine's bedspread and from the rape kit.
We've got some DNA here. Now we just got to match it.
The DNA actually doesn't match her ex-boyfriend, and he's now cleared in the case. And there are no matches to the DNA in CODIS, which is the National Criminal Offender DNA database either.
Police were really stumped. They tried every avenue they could think of, but every avenue hit a dead end. One of their initial theories was that the killer had some sort of law enforcement background. The handcuffs were Smith & Wesson. That's a popular brand with law enforcement.
They were trying everything they could think of. They really did. They went and tracked down sales of handcuffs in this area, receipts.
All members of the Beaumont Police Department were tested. There were no matches.
It kind of sent a panic through the community. You know, if this can happen to somebody in a really quiet part of town, could it happen to them, kind of thing.
It went from a rumor to just spreading like wildfire throughout the community. Everybody wanted to know, was this a one-time deal? Was this a serial killer?
The case would go cold for decades, and obviously it's just one of hundreds of thousands of unsolved murders in this country. But then in 2020, two investigators, Ranger Brandon Best and Beaumont Police Detective Aaron Llewellyn, decided to take a fresh look at the case. At the time, Best had just been connected with this new lab called Othram, and Detective Llewellyn knows that there's DNA that's actually available to test in this case.
But when Brandon presented Othram to me right then and there, I'm like, let's make this happen.
We believed that was going to be our only hope.
The last hope for answers, the DNA evidence from the murder of that elementary school teacher, Catherine Edwards, is now headed to Othram for testing.
Bloody fingerprint left on a phone and a footprint.
And in the case of that Michigan mom, Kathy Swartz, what new lead is about to be uncovered right behind this glass? You'll see right here tonight how both cases are about to crack wide open, sending investigators across this country to find the killers they've been searching for decades.
The person that did it was in the 10,000 pages of police reports.
You have all these puzzle pieces, but if they don't all fit together, you don't see the picture.
I want you to think about the next words that come out of your mouth. I want you to think very hard about that. We felt like we had a home run right then and there.
And they said he was like a godly man down there.
I was like, wow, we're gonna get some answers.
Tonight, two horrible murders.
I just felt awful.
And now a survivor who lived to tell.
I was just like, I can't tell him. I'll never tell anybody what happened.
What did your daughter do? She's been murdered!
It gives you chills even today.
Even today.
That someone had written on her body, on the inside of her thigh, and said, I was here.
But only one way to solve them after years of going cold.
I honestly felt the genetic genealogy was our only chance.
But all these years later, they said, well, look at this and see if there's something you can do with it.
It's his fingerprint, it's his bare bloody footprint, and it's his DNA.
It turned into a massacre.
The floor goes out from under you. I'm like, no way, this cannot be happening.
He said, your sister's dead, your sister's dead.
There's two people that know that story. You're one of them, and she's the other. And she can't talk.
Without the DNA, the story doesn't matter.
That the two of them were able to go back and look at that evidence.
Yes.
From when you were a 9-month-old baby.
Yes.
In the crib, just a few feet from your mother.
And there was a moment like, oh, this is our guy.
For some families, you are the last hope. Who was the killer? For years, you were haunted by that question.
Yeah, growing up, most kids, they look at people and they don't have to think, is that the man that killed your mom? And everybody that I met, that's the first thing that would pop into my mind.
This is the original file from 1988.
When you have your files in a cold case, the killer's name, it's in there somewhere.
The profilers really believed that whoever it was would return to her gravesite. And for years, that was part of our initial our rookie training program was, this is Kathy Swartz's gravesite. If you see somebody at that gravesite, you need to stop and identify them because they could be a prime suspect in the murder.
More than 1,000 miles from Three Rivers, Michigan, we're right here on the Neches River in Beaumont, Texas, where another family, heartbroken for decades, the community wondering, do they too have a killer in their midst after the brutal murder of a young elementary school teacher, Catherine Edwards. She was just 31. And detectives here wondering, would they ever have the tools to solve this case?
You know that every day that you don't solve that crime is a day that you're not going to be able to bring that perpetrator to justice.
This certainly is a scene that has always stayed with me.
And you retired, and when you left the force, at that point it had not been solved.
That's correct. Every now and then, someone would dust off the case file and start looking at it with fresh eyes, and I always thought, maybe this time something will spark and we'll catch whoever did this.
It would turn out that spark, the one that would finally reignite the whole investigation into the murder of Catherine Edwards, was actually coming, thanks to a major leap forward in forensic technology.
In 2020, a courier drops off a package at Othram's office. And inside are a sample of the bedspread from Catherine Edwards' apartment, a vial of DNA taken from the posthumous rape kit. Othram technicians take a look and they build a genetic profile of their suspect.
Investigators now have a human profile that can actually be searched in public databases to try to find possible family members across this country. And to do that, you need a genealogist to connect the dots. And Beaumont detective Aaron Llewellyn didn't have to look far for help.
Aaron Llewellyn knew one who would work the case for free, and that was his wife, Tina.
I remember sitting at the table one night and getting really frustrated trying to map all this out. And she's like, let me help.
Actually, just move over. I got this.
No, Tina doesn't ask.
Tina Llewellyn was a detective in the Beaumont Auto Crimes Division. And she had an amateur interest in genealogy.
I can remember dozing off one night and I wake up and she's got lines going here and lines going there.
So now, along with the Middlemans from the Othram Forensic Laboratory, you've got two husband-wife teams actually working the case of this elementary school teacher, Catherine Edwards. And soon another critical partner joins the hunt.
When Tina Llewellyn is looking through the matches to their suspect, these are distant relatives of the suspected killer, she notices that a lot of them are clustered in Cajun country in Louisiana. And the same contact name keeps popping up. This woman named Shara LaPointe.
I was sitting at my desk one day and I got a phone call. He said, I'm Detective Aaron Llewellyn from the Beaumont Police Department. Your email is attached to one of the matches that we have to the person of interest.
Shara LaPointe just happens to be a professional genealogist with experience working in criminal cases. She also has Cajun ancestry.
Cajuns, back to the late 1700s, we were a small population who came to South Louisiana. And so they married their neighbors, who was usually their relatives also.
Cajun ancestry is notoriously complicated and complex to perform genealogical work on.
I knew it was going to be a challenge from the start. We spent hours and hours and hours on the phone talking to each other.
Probably no less than 5 times a day.
A friendship quickly forms as the two women spend the next 3 months building a family tree around the suspect's DNA, using every record they can find, a combination of internet research and good old-fashioned library archives.
A lot of newspaper articles.
A lot of newspaper
Obituaries.
articles. Census records. I remember I got to a couple in Beaumont, and there are yearbook records of 2 sons that couple had.
And the first one we came across, he was the right age. He went to the same high school with our victim.
Aaron goes and does research and finds out that he had a criminal history from here, and it was a prior sexual assault that had occurred in 1981.
And there was a moment like, oh, this is our guy.
And the details of that assault set off alarm bells for detectives.
There were a lot of similarities in that case that mimicked Catherine Edwards' case. The victim's hands were bound behind her back, and she was sexually assaulted.
We felt like we had a home run right then and there.
Suddenly they realized that this suspect had a second victim. The difference this time, the victim survived and lived to tell.
He started telling me that he was training to become a policeman and stuff.
He was like, I'll just take you home. I don't know why, but I believed him.
So all these years later, investigators in the Catherine Edwards case, the school teacher who was brutally murdered, now think there might have been a second victim of the suspect who is still alive, Paula Bledsoe Ramsey.
I was 19. There was a new country western bar that opened up. I really didn't want to go that night, but I'd promised the other girls that I would go. I decided I wanted to leave. I was done. I wanted to get home. The parking lot was mud, and my car was stuck in the mud. I just thought, I'll just walk to the gas station and call my mom.
She says a man offered her a ride home.
He said his brother's name, and then he said where he went to high school. And then he said, do you go to Forest Park? And I was like, yeah. And then he started telling me that he was training to become a policeman and stuff. And so then he was like, I'll just take you home. And I don't know why, but, you know, I believed him.
She realized very quickly that that man wasn't driving in the direction of her home.
He started off being very nice. Next thing I know, we're at this field, and then his whole demeanor changed.
He drove her to a nearby park, threatened her with a knife, tied her hands behind her back, and raped her in the backseat of the car. Then he dropped her off at her house.
I just felt awful and shameful, and I was just like, I can't tell him. I'll never tell anybody what happened. I don't know. I was kind of like, I don't know if anybody would believe me. You know, is it my fault? Was it my fault?
Paula said she summoned the courage about a week later to tell police what had happened. They would soon tell her that they identified the man who attacked her, and it turns out he wasn't a police trainee. He was a 21-year-old salesman in Beaumont.
He said, yeah, I did it. I just got carried away.
She said that the prosecutor talked to her, said, you know, this is his first offense. We want to plead him to an aggravated assault. She didn't understand what that meant other than he was pleading to a felony and for assaulting her, and so she agreed to the plea bargain agreement.
I think today they take it more serious than they did back then. I wanted him to be punished. I think I was just pushing everything down and just trying to focus on with life.
Hey, good. How are you?
Ranger Bess?
Brandon. Yes,
Good
sir.
to see you.
Pleasure. Yes, sir.
So when you looked at what had happened in 1981 with this sexual assault, you thought there's a lot here that seems awfully close to the Catherine Edwards case.
I did.
It turns out that the man who pleaded guilty in that 1981 case is a man by the name of Clayton Foreman. Now, this is the same name that turned up in Tina and Cher's genealogy hunt. He was one of two brothers from the family tree that they actually put together. And you might be wondering why his name never surfaced before. You have to remember that this case was back in 1981, and DNA collection wasn't even a thing by law enforcement. It was still a decade away.
This is how he eluded detectives at the time. He essentially got away scot-free.
As investigators get closer to solving this mystery, they begin to learn more about Clayton Foreman's background. And in a twist in this case, one of the things they learned is that Clayton Foreman, the suspect, actually went to the same school as Catherine Edwards, the woman who was killed. In fact, they probably walked down the same hallways here at school. And there was something else. Catherine Edwards was actually friends with the suspect's first wife. In fact, Catherine Edwards was a bridesmaid at their wedding.
Investigators figure out that Clayton Foreman is working in a suburb of Columbus, Ohio, and he's working as a rideshare driver.
We've got a suspect. Now we've got to make sure that's the right guy. So they go, they pull the trash can, they get some plastic silverware from takeout and some other things from the trash can.
So you tell the FBI what you found, and they gather some trash at the suspect's home in Ohio.
Correct. They shipped that down here to me, and then once I went through it, I coordinated with our lab here in Texas to see what items would be best to test, and they compared it to the evidence that we had.
And we got the call. This is our guy. This is a match. Of course, we're chomping at the bit to get there to Ohio.
So he'd been told that one of his Uber customers had something taken and that he needed to come down. Maybe you guys could ask him a few questions about it. That's not what you were going to ask him about.
No, not at all.
What we're here about is we're cold case investigators.
Okay.
You want that shock and awe factor. You want him to walk in the room, you want him to see a guy with a cowboy hat on, and he knows that this is not someone from Ohio.
We're asking you to visit with us about a crime that we're investigating, okay? You don't have to talk to us at all.
He thought we were there just following up on an old case, like, hey, these guys, they don't have anything. They're just asking me all these questions in case they do one day. I don't think he had any idea that we had his DNA.
So the crime that we're looking at is the murder of Mary Catherine Edwards. She was murdered in 1995. She and her sister, Allison, were actually in your wedding.
Right.
And
1982.
Were you aware of the crime even?
No.
You didn't know that Catherine Edwards was murdered?
No, sir.
Did not. Wedding night only would have been the only time you've seen her?
Probably so.
Okay. Never, obviously, had sex with her?
No.
Never?
Never.
Did you ever go in her house at all? Any house that she ever lived in?
No.
Clay, I'm going to level with you. Okay? Right here and now, and I want you to hear me real close.
All right, sir.
What I'm going to tell you right now is your DNA was on Catherine's bed and was inside Catherine.
Okay. I mean, I don't know how I got there, but per se it was there.
There's only one way for it to get there.
Okay.
And that's by you putting it there.
Okay.
There's two people that know that story. You're one of them, and she's the other. And she can't talk.
Mm-hmm.
What I ask you is, now, to be honest with us completely, and tell us, how did that happen?
I'm not going to say anything. So if I need an attorney now,
You probably need one, or you do need one?
I'll need an attorney.
After he makes it outside, that's when we execute the arrest warrant and arrested him.
You showed up with the handcuffs that he used on Catherine Edwards.
We did, and got to put him on him after we got through interviewing him.
Did he know that those were the handcuffs he used?
He was told.
New developments tonight on the murder of a beloved Beaumont teacher.
So finally, 36 years after Catherine Edwards' murder and arrest, the team can now return to Texas to prepare for trial. And in South Carolina, another team of investigators, they're now chasing a promising lead in their case because of this new technology. The murder of Michigan mom Kathy Swartz, whose daughter has gone so many years without answers. At what point did hope return for you?
I got a phone call from Sam Smallcombe, and he said, we may have the guy that killed your mom.
How can we help you?
Investigators working the cold case murder of Kathy Swartz, the young Michigan mother who was murdered, her baby right nearby, they had sent off the perpetrator's DNA taken from her pink phone to that lab in Texas, Othram. So after 3 decades with no arrests in this case, Othram actually uses their cutting-edge technology to build a comprehensive DNA sequence of who the perpetrator is.
So now that you have this sequencing that they just didn't have access to years ago, what do you then do with that?
We could use that profile to search a database of people, and in doing this, we can then begin to figure out how these people that are near relatives are arranged on a family tree. And if we can do that, then we can begin to ask where the person that we're looking to identify might fit on the tree.
In going down the family tree, you find that there is actually a family that lives in Three Rivers, Michigan, a mother and father with 4 sons.
Yes.
That's correct.
We got the report back, and they believed it was a family that had lived in Three Rivers. The DNA was male, so this narrowed it down to 4 brothers. The youngest brother, Barry, and then there was, the oldest was Sonny Waters, then John Waters, and then Robert Waters. We were very excited because now we have leads to run off from. We were very quickly be able to eliminate Barry because his DNA that was in CODIS.
And they're able to rule him out, so they take him right off the list. Detectives then track down 2 more of the Waters brothers, who both quickly agree to turn over their DNA.
1, 2, 3, 4.
And with that DNA, they're able to eliminate them as well, which just left Robert Waters.
Robert Waters was married, had a couple of children, and had been living in Beaufort, South Carolina for quite some time. He was a local business owner and had a plumbing business.
And from what detectives can tell from looking at his wife's Facebook page, Robert Waters appears to be a happily married family man.
Hey, how you doing?
Good morning.
Hey, Robert. Morning. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
How can we help you?
I'm Sam Smallcombe from Three Rivers PD. This is Todd Peters from Michigan State Police.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you too.
Can we talk for just a couple minutes? Sure. Not inconvenience
All right.
too much?
Yeah.
He seemed like the guy next door that would mow your lawn for you if you were going to be out of town for a week.
So I'm helping Sam, and we reopened this case from Three Rivers from way back in the day, going back through and getting interviews and just clearing everything up. Okay. So we were wondering if you'd have time to come down to the PD and talk with us down there.
Yeah.
Okay. Somebody comes into your, knocks on your door, investigators from another state, and asks you to come down to the department and talk. You're probably going to ask why. Never asks why, and agrees to drive himself down and meet us there. So we'll just expect you in a couple minutes, and we'll meet you down.
That's fine.
All right. Thank you, sir.
After initially not showing at the police station, detectives call Waters. He's informed that they have a warrant for his prints and his DNA, and later that day he actually comes in.
But what I'm probably going to do is do the 3 and...
We had to just focus on getting the fingerprints and the DNA. Yeah, don't have a seat.
And one of the issues we'd run into is the Beaufort Police Department did not have the fingerprint live scan machine. So we had to use the traditional ink and paper.
Hang on for just a second. I got to take a call real quick here. Yes, sir.
Hey, sorry to bother you. We're struggling with this print here.
Unfortunately, at that police station, they're having trouble actually getting a clean print from Waters.
You want to come get your fingers dirty again? We're going to try to do it on just card stock. Okay.
So we rolled them a second time, sent those back.
Never gets upset about it, never gets worked up about the time.
We're going to go flat down.
He still just willingly, I guess, hung out with us.
So you've got the detectives now waiting for a definitive answer from the lab in Michigan. So they spend the next 5 hours actually making small talk with Robert Waters.
Yeah. If you like seafood.
Yep, I do.
You will like that place.
We talked about our families, his family, plumbing, and remodeling houses. You would never guess by looking at that guy that he was concerned about why he was there or the outcome of it.
All right. Okay, I just wanted to tell you, we did submit the print that we took from you earlier. It did match to the one at the crime scene. So at this time, you are under arrest for the murder of Kathy Schwartz. Okay?
Okay.
It really surprised me. He did not really react. I feel like he knew when we showed up that morning that the game was up.
Do you remember when you learned that the prints were a match?
There was just so many emotions and everything going on that I was just overwhelmed and so excited because finally they had him.
So after decades, you have your answer.
Yes.
53-year-old Robert Waters, a former Three Rivers resident, now a plumber, husband, father, and accused killer.
I didn't recognize his name, didn't sound familiar to me at all.
But investigators always believed that Kathy Schwartz must have known her killer in some way. You'll remember there was no forced entry. And they finally discover the connection when they go back to speak to Kathy's one-time fiance, Mike Warner.
Well, let me ask you the obvious question. What about Rob Waters?
He came there one time.
He came there one time.
One time.
Okay. Do you remember, like, was that close to December? That was...
I think so.
He knew Robbie Waters, had visited the apartment about a month before the murder.
We hadn't seen him since grade school. Yeah.
Okay, so he just somehow figured out that you guys were living in Riverside and showed up that one time.
Yeah.
I honestly think she knew him then, obviously, because he was friends with Mike, and he was in town and tried to come see my mom, and she wasn't having it.
He's waiting to be extradited to St. Joseph County.
It really was, you know, like, wow, we're gonna get some answers. We're gonna find some things out.
But before his day in court could actually come, the suspect, Robert Waters, does something that shocks everyone.
No way, this cannot be happening.
A major breakthrough in a cold case murder out of Three Rivers.
Investigators say they have finally arrested a suspect. His name is 53-year-old Robert Waters.
Those too tight?
No.
The plans were already in place. He had waived extradition, so he knew that he's going to be brought back to Michigan.
They go down to South Carolina, and they discover that this man had been living a full life.
Yeah.
Married, children, a job.
A good job. A good life. And they said he was like a godly man down there.
To that you say?
No, they don't know the real man.
But after evading law enforcement for decades, Robert Waters never makes it back to Michigan.
At like 6:30 in the morning, I received a call from an investigator from Beaufort, and she had explained that she had just come from the jail and that Robert Waters had hung himself in his cell.
I'm like, no way, this cannot be happening. Again, like a disbelief, like why, how could this happen?
Yeah, he had some material that they'd given him in the jail, and it was some devotionals, and the parts that he had ripped out talked about forgiveness and asking for forgiveness.
To me, it says that you're guilty. I mean, no one is going to do that in that situation if they're innocent.
You feel robbed that you did not get the opportunity to see him face to face.
Yes. I just wanted him to feel my presence in the room.
What would you have said to him in court?
I don't think I would have said anything. I just think I would have walked in, and my presence is enough words for him.
He would have seen that baby
Yeah.
that he left there in that crib all
And probably my mom, because I look like her, they say.
He's a coward. To take her away from all of us in the manner that he did, and then he got to go live his life. You're not gonna give us any answers. I mean, he's just a coward.
But remember, there are 2 cases here that have been unlocked by this new technology. And back in Beaumont, Texas, Catherine Edwards' loved ones are determined to see the suspect in that case, Clayton Foreman, the man charged with murdering her, face a jury.
Clayton Foreman goes on trial in March of 2024 in Beaumont. He is charged with capital murder.
Clayton Bernard Foreman, how do you plead to the indictment, guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
There were family there, there were friends there, there were former students of Catherine's that were there to see that justice was going to be served.
Prosecutors begin by playing that 911 call Catherine's parents made for the jury.
Police. What's going on? I found my daughter murdered.
That 911 tape was very impactful to start the trial off with. That really gets you involved and to know that something horrible happened.
You know, Catherine's parents did not live to see the man accused of killing their daughter arrested. So this is left now to the twin sister, Allison, to tell jurors about her sister.
Are you related to Mary Catherine Edwards?
Yes, she was my twin sister.
Allison is now 60 years old, and she offered really powerful testimony about growing up with Catherine.
She just was always very nurturing and loving to people. And if anyone had a problem, they would come to her, and she would talk to strangers and make friends with people and compliment people, and just was an amazing person.
Allison recalls the afternoon where her sister's body was discovered. Catherine just never showed up to this lunch. So eventually her father, Lum, agreed to go check on her.
And my dad answered the phone. And he was frantic. And he said, your sister's dead, your sister's dead.
And it was just heartbreaking to see. I mean, her twin, identical twin, is what she would have looked like today if she was alive, and there she is up on the stand testifying. And the emotion and the love and the hurt, all of it came out and was so impactful with the jury.
Allison said when Catherine died, she thought her parents died a little bit that day too.
It was horrible. They were never the same. But we decided as a family after that happened that we were gonna not let what happened kill us too, and that we were gonna live to honor her, and that's what we always did after that.
In a heart-crushing moment, Allison shares with the jury how she honored her sister after her death.
4 years later, I had a daughter, and her name is Catherine. Catherine Ann, after my sister. But she never got to know her. My oldest was 9 months old, and she was her godmother, and she never got to know her either.
You can know the case inside out, but until you see somebody testify and see the raw emotion that's going on, that was raw emotion that they relived on the stand.
Excuse me, thank you.
The prosecution's next witness is about to detail the surprising connection between Catherine Edwards and Clayton Foreman.
And you got married to a person by the name of Clayton Foreman.
Yes.
And what she's about to tell the jury about his reaction to Catherine's death.
It dumbfounded me.
Jurors in the trial of Clayton Foreman, the man accused of killing that school teacher, Catherine Edwards, are now hearing about this investigation that took nearly 30 years, and all of it now culminating with this cutting-edge DNA testing done by that Texas lab, Othram.
Please have a seat.
I was very eager to get to the courtroom. I work at Othram. We'll do the testing, and it will result in the building of a DNA profile to generate new leads in the investigation. There's one thing to solve a case, and there's another to be able to defend how that work was done, allow it to be interrogated openly and critiqued. We want to see at least 50% of the markers, and you can see that in actuality we had, it looks like 87%. So that's far in excess of what is necessary to produce a workable profile.
Without the DNA, the story doesn't matter. That's that one puzzle piece that puts it all together.
So prosecutors want the jurors now to hear from the woman who can actually detail the connection between that school teacher, Catherine Edwards, and Clayton Foreman. She was married to him.
My name's Diana Coe.
And remember, Catherine Edwards and her twin sister were actually bridesmaids at the wedding.
Were they friends of yours in high school?
Yes.
She also testified that while she was married to Foreman, she actually discovered something unnerving in his car.
You had found a briefcase in the trunk of the defendant's car, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. What was inside the briefcase?
There was a gun, a set of handcuffs, and some horrible pornographic material.
Okay. Regarding the gun, was there any reason for him to have a gun that you knew of at the time?
No reason. I mean,
Is there any reason that you knew of that he would have a pair of handcuffs in the back of his trunk?
no,
Did you ever talk to him about that?
no. I didn't know what he would say. I didn't know what he would do.
And later, when questioned by the defense, Diana said she never saw the briefcase again. She also recalled an odd conversation that she'd actually had with her ex-husband about Catherine and her twin sister.
He had told me that in high school, he would see them in the hall, and he always thought they were so cute because they were twins, and he felt as though he wanted to make sure he protected them.
After 11 years of marriage, Diana and Foreman divorced, but they continue to stay in touch. And she tells jurors how 2 years later, in 1995, she actually called her ex-husband after finding out that Catherine had been murdered.
Was that very upsetting to you?
Yes.
When you told him, how did he react?
He didn't. It was very shocking to me. It had like no feeling whatsoever, and just basically was like, oh, really? And it dumbfounded me.
Excuse me, thank you. And there was one more witness jurors would hear from, Paula Ramsey, Foreman's victim from 1981. It had been decades since Paula had even heard the name of the man who assaulted her.
It was a Friday, and I was at work. My phone rang, and it said Beaumont Police. This emotion came over me, and I was like, what? Is someone messing with me?
And on the other end of the line was Detective Llewellyn.
He said he's a suspect in a murder. And that's when he started telling me about the DNA. And he said, it is a cold case murder. And I was like, you don't even have to ask. I will go. I will testify. We hung up. I just broke down. I mean, you just go back to being that girl again, where that fear and all of it just kind of consumes you again.
And so suddenly, all these years later, in a courtroom full of strangers, Paula is telling her story about how she was assaulted by Foreman.
Did he do something with your hands?
He tied them in the back, behind.
He took your hands, put them behind you, and secured them with an object. Do you believe that object may have been a belt?
Yes.
Did he threaten to cut your throat if you didn't do what he wanted?
Yes. I just kind of blocked out everything else and just focused on the questions.
Did he say something that you found odd concerning what he'd just done to you?
Yes.
What was that?
When I was getting out of the car, he said, stop crying. I'm sorry. I hope I didn't hurt you. You have to say these things out loud, and then knowing that he's sitting right over there, and just being in the same room, and that was hard.
She relived it on that stand, and it was amazing to watch her how brave she was to do that.
You came here today to tell this jury what happened to you 43 years ago, right?
Yes.
Who did you do that for?
For Catherine. I wanted to see justice done for her.
And in the end, Clayton Foreman's defense, they wouldn't call any witnesses, but they did deliver a closing statement.
You, ordinary citizens, get to decide whether or not, on the day in question, January 14th of 1995, Clayton committed the offense of capital murder. He may not like it, what he did back in 81. That doesn't make him a murderer. That doesn't make him that he went out and killed somebody.
The case was very one-sided, and the prosecution had all the witnesses, had all the evidence. There was very little the defense could do.
The verdict is in. 29 years of waiting came down to 7 days of testimony and ultimately 52 minutes of deliberation.
I'll tell you that anytime I've had a jury trial, I'm scared to death when they're walking back in that room. That is the most tense moment ever for me.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of the offense of capital murder.
It took police nearly 30 years to bring Clayton Foreman to trial for the murder of Catherine Edwards. It took the jury less than an hour to convict him. It was very fast. He was sentenced to life in prison.
It was just relief. I was thankful that I did it. Thankful that it did help. It did help putting him away.
It was an extraordinary thing to have closure in that courtroom for that young school teacher. And that other case, the mother who was brutally murdered, her baby, just a few feet away. Now, she's about to meet the couple who unlocked this case. As we stand here today, all these years later, it's so peaceful and quiet here. It's hard to imagine what played out behind us.
It is. Thankfully, the detectives worked very, very hard on this.
And never gave up.
Never gave up, and they solved it. Detective Llewellyn called me, and he said, "Hey, Carmen, you remember how you said you always wanted that case solved before you retired?" Well, I know you've retired, but I think we got him, and he did.
I can see the satisfaction on your face. Justice after all these years.
After all these years, absolutely.
Justice, finally, for that elementary school teacher, Catherine Edwards. And in the second case, justice as well for Kathy Swartz's daughter, Courtney. Hi, Courtney.
Hello. Hi.
So these are the two who helped solve the case.
Hello,
Kristen. Just the idea, though, that the two of them were able to go back and look at that evidence and solve it all these years later.
I don't even have no words.
You don't need words. I'm glad you have answers.
Thank you.
It's unbelievable just in my career to see, like when I started in '97 to where we're at today. You have these cases that are literally going nowhere. You give them this DNA sample and the next thing you know who your suspect is.
Do you think that there are cases like this all over the country right now just waiting to be solved with this new technology?
Absolutely, all over the country and all over the world, but finding every case, I think, would be the goal. Every one, every sexual assault, every homicide, every one of them. We need to find those cases and we need to get them submitted and worked.
And that means answers, finally, for thousands of families.
Sure, absolutely.
There are tens of thousands of little tubes of DNA in crime labs across this country, and all of them have answers.
I think we're going to live in a world in this lifetime where there are no unidentified victims, victims that are named voiceless, where perpetrators are caught the first time they commit a crime.
For some families, you are the last hope.
For many.
Yeah.
I don't believe in closure when you've gone through something as horrible as one of these violent crimes, but I do believe that truth allows you to turn the page.
I have been living with this for 36 years, and these people, they took their time. They solved this case with DNA so I can close this book and open up my own book with my own kids.
A citizen detective and a true crime writer.
Very much being a mom during the day, very much writing about true crime at night. She was working on all different types of unsolved cases. Then she found a case that really dug its claws into her.
What turned him on was terror. The East Area Rapist Original Night Stalker is California's most prolific serial offender.
He murdered more people than the Zodiac Killer, but has little name recognition. Partly that's because he moved between communities, and his crimes spanned 10 years.
Everything about it is a mystery, and it has such a boogeyman aspect to it.
Michelle used to talk about this case, and the thing that boggled her mind is that people didn't know about it. This was one of the most horrific serial killers in history, and nobody talked about him.
It's summer, 1976. It was the bicentennial. It's all about happy days, Laverne and Shirley.
Hassenbeff Incorporated.
In those days, the middle class in America was thriving.
We felt safe, but the crime rates were going up.
But suburban Sacramento was considered a safe place in the mid-70s.
You could ride your bike all over town.
My parents would just tell us be home before dark.
People didn't lock their doors, they left their windows open, especially people close to the river. We'd get the Delta breeze.
Everything changed in the summer of 1976.
An attack occurred in Rancho Cordova.
A young lady woke up, and there's a guy standing in the doorway. They blindfolded her, tied her up,
and then sexually assaults her. This is the first known sexual assault attributed to the man we know as the East Area Rapist.
Nobody knew about the first attack except the police. The first attack, the second, the third, the fourth.
When this first started in Sacramento, a lot of the people didn't know what was going on. They didn't put it in the paper at the time.
The press had not yet covered it because Sacramento County Sheriff's Department asked them not to.
There was a reason for that if you put it in there, the suspect's going to know that you're looking for him.
At the time the rape started happening in Sacramento Sheriff's Department didn't have a specialized sexual assault unit. Just whoever had a free caseload, that could take on another case. And so I did not become involved with these cases until rape number 5, when it was Jane Carson.
I was 30 years old. I was married with a 3-year-old son. My husband was stationed at McClellan Air Force Base.
Jane was a nurse. She was a colonel in the Air Force Reserve.
It was about 6:30 in the morning. My 3-year-old son hopped in bed with me for a snuggle. I heard the garage door close, and I knew my husband had just left for work. I saw a flashlight shining down the hall, and I thought, now that's odd, and I screamed out to my husband, "What have you forgotten?" And there was no answer.
Then the rapist, all dressed in ski mask and dark clothes, shining a flashlight at her.
He told us with clenched teeth, "Shut up, or I'll kill you."
He tells her to turn over, and he's going to tie her up.
He gags us, both of us. He blindfolds us, and he ties us up with shoelaces, very tight. His next move was to move my son. I was already scared to death, but this is where the fear really took place.
All she's thinking about is the life of her little boy and saving him.
After the rape was over, praise the Lord, he moved my son back next to me. I could feel his body, and then I was relieved. So we hobbled around to the front fence, screamed for a neighbor. She called the police. And then Carol Daly, the female detective, showed up. And I call her my angel.
One of my great heroes of this story is Carol Daly. She was an investigator for the Sheriff Department in Sacramento. She was asked to go out and interview the victims.
Maybe something that the man said, or something that he did to you, or something that you recall hearing.
Through that process, she was able to glean a lot of information, like what he would say to his victims. And sometimes he would call out a name.
In one of the cases, the victim said that she heard him crying and saying Bonnie.
For years, detectives didn't know what to make of this name. Who's Bonnie?
Bonnie was not a victim, but a mystery woman at the center of the case.
Bonnie was the girlfriend and then fiance of Joseph DeAngelo.
One of the first women to get a real glimpse of the psychopathy behind Joe DeAngelo was Bonnie Caldwell.
She's 18, really smart, going to a community college, studying nursing. And she's in the middle of the quad, and this older guy ambles up to her and begins a conversation.
Bonnie talked about her relationship with Joe DeAngelo in the HBO docuseries I'll Be Gone in the Dark.
He was very gregarious, outgoing to all my friends. We'd been together close to a year. He gave me a high solitaire engagement ring. And he told me that we're going to be married.
They were both students at the time.
He was studying criminal justice. So Joe was someone who initially was impressive to Bonnie. He was exciting. He had a motorcycle. He taught her to shoot. But the longer she dated him, the more trouble began materializing.
He takes her on thrill rides. And this is where the relationship starts to show its hand with Joe.
Joe, without saying a word to me, just turned right, went down a very steep bank that I had no idea what he was doing.
He's obviously thrilled not just by the speed, but he's thrilled by Bonnie's terror.
The rules were never for him. So many of the things that we did together, he pushed me toward fear.
As they're riding on a motorcycle, the German Shepherd comes out from the side of the road and nips at the tires, and Joe swings a foot out and breaks the dog's neck instantly. There's such an efficiency to his movement that stuns her.
Eventually, Bonnie said, "I don't want to be with you anymore."
She actually broke their engagement. He showed up at her house in the middle of the night. He had a gun, and he told her that she had to marry him.
Just inches from my face, there was the barrel of a gun pointing at me, and it was Joe. What he said to me was, "Get your clothes on, get dressed, we're going to Reno, and we're going to get married tonight."
Her dad was able to break it up and send Joe on his way. I think it's a foreshadowing that he was going to use violence against people in the future.
Bonnie breaks her engagement with Joe D'Angelo, and within just a few years, strange crimes start happening in Rancho Cordova.
He would empty female underwear drawers and perfectly line up the underwear down the hallway.
It's all control and power. This is my house now. These are my items now. He's the king of the house.
Every obsession needs a room of its own. Mine was strewn with coloring paper on which I'd scribbled down California penal codes in crayon. It was around midnight on July 3rd, 2012, when I opened a document I'd compiled listing all the unique items he'd stolen over the years.
He would take mementos, almost like they were trophies from inside the home.
He would steal rings with engravings on them.
He stole driver's license. He stole photos from albums.
There is a fantasy component about these crimes.
I still have a part of you. I have your jewelry, I have your driver's license, I have, something that means something to you. And now I own it.
He was a serial rapist known as the Ear, attacking women and girls. First in East Sacramento County. This place meant something to him. He attacked here first and kept coming back. Was it home? Some of the investigators, especially the ones who worked the case in the beginning, think so.
We were always trying to figure out why victims were chosen and why the locations were chosen.
For Joe D'Angelo, this was his home, right in his own backyard. He lived in 3 or 4 houses in this exact same area where many of the rapes were committed.
He grew up in Rancho Cordova. He was familiar with the playgrounds, the schools, the empty lots. This is the home of the first documented rape that occurred in Sacramento County. He was very agile. He could jump over fences. He knew which way to go from whatever neighborhood he was in. He knew the best way to get in and out.
He knew this area like the back of his hand. He grew up there.
Joseph D'Angelo Jr. grew up the son of a master sergeant in the Air Force who moved around a lot.
We met Joe when he was 13 years old. My father was stationed at Mayfair Air Force Base, and then his father was transferred there, and we shared a duplex.
The girl who became very close to him at the time, Judy, described a very lonely boy.
He was missing a family. His mother and father had split when he was young.
At a very young age, he was neglected. He and his siblings would be locked in the closet and then beaten by the father.
Per his siblings, Joe D'Angelo received the worst of his vitriol and anger when they were growing up.
Joe was always over at our house, and he just became a good family friend. He never talked about himself. He never talked about any problems he might have. He never discussed anything that was bothering him. They started reporting, the peeping Toms here in Rancho. And I remember I was in the bedroom and I was asleep, and I had this feeling. I woke up because I had this feeling somebody was there. And when I looked up and glanced towards the window, I saw this outlined figure. I didn't do anything to let him know I saw them, that I was aware of them. So the next morning I came in here and I says, Dad, I says, somebody was peeking in my window last night. And he says, what? And I says, yeah. And there was footprints out there in the dirt, 2 distinct footprints there.
It's very common for sexual offenders to start out, particularly in adolescence, as peepers or voyeurs that are creeping around the neighborhood, looking in windows, watching women undress, almost like a training ground.
Many of us had never seen anything like this before in our career. His whole thing was terror. It wasn't the sex, it was the terror that he wanted to put in these people that was his #1 priority.
His victims ranged in age from 13, I think, to 39.
Out of the first 10 attacks, 6 of those were juveniles.
Oftentimes, sex offenders or sexual serial murderers will start out with, I guess, easier victims that are younger, that are more vulnerable, victims that he can control.
My name is Chris Pedretti. I was 15. I was a kid, just a normal kid, cartwheels in the front yard, and really not a care in the world. It was not ever even a thought that our world might be unsafe.
So it was a week before Christmas. She'd been left home alone.
I was supposed to go to a high school dance, and it was the last day before Christmas vacation. I put a pizza in the oven, and I went to go play the piano. I remember hearing a noise, and I stopped playing and listened. Didn't hear it again. No, it was nothing. So I kept playing. It was very shortly after that, probably seconds, that he approached me.
She turned around and she saw a man in a ski mask.
I froze. The brain stopped thinking at that point. I mean, I just went straight into survival mode. I don't remember thinking at that point anything other than kind of turning into a robot. Just do what he says, do what he says. It was like Chris had left the body, and it was just the body left.
That individual led her to the back patio. She tied her up.
I didn't know about rape. I certainly didn't know about sex. What he did to me, what he took from me, I can't ever get it back. He kind of ruined my childhood. You know, he took it away.
Everybody knew something was going on, but nobody knew exactly what.
The sheriff decided that we would hold community forums. I had no idea there were going to be several hundred people that would show up. If we have a gun, could we shoot him? Knowing what I know about this man, if I had a gun, I definitely would shoot him. And I would not shoot to injure, I would shoot to take care of him.
He liked this. He liked the police being on edge. He liked the town being on edge.
I have a gun, but I still don't feel safe being, at home alone.
Law enforcement was bracing for more attacks as his rampage of violence continued. His tactics were changing, and no one knew what he would do next.
So I have to admit, I'm scared to death.
The young girl made one bad move after another. Her attitude was much too inviting. She should never have stopped to window shop at night.
In the 1970s, when a woman reported rape, she was shamed, she was blamed. Often she was ostracized by her own community.
Rape cases really weren't considered serious. They were misdemeanor. You had to make an arrest within a year, or else they were not prosecuted. Even if an arrest was made, the defense was always it was the victim's fault.
Rape was such a prevalent crime back in those days that there were multiple serial rapists operating in California.
217 were reported last year. That's about one every day and a half.
In the Bay Area, you had the stinky rapist who smelled like diesel fuel.
I had pillowcase rapist. You had the key car rapist.
When the East Area Rapist became active in Sacramento, he quickly upstaged all the other rapists in the area because of how terrifying his MO was.
Concern over rape is mounting in this community.
There was panic in the city of Sacramento. The fact that they couldn't catch this guy just ignited the city in fear.
No one knows where or when he'll strike again.
They were getting guard dogs, they were putting in alarm systems in their homes.
Have the dog in the house, the big dog.
The worst thing is not knowing. All you can do is take every possible precaution and then hope that he gets caught before he gets to you.
Every day in the newspaper, it was number 8, it was number 10, it was number 15, 20. You know, it just kept going on and on and on.
It seemed like every time investigators thought they were getting close, he would disappear. But he kept attacking again and again.
He was elusive, like a puff of smoke in the night.
Detective Carol Daly wanted this serial rapist behind bars, and she was relentless in her pursuit of him, but constantly frustrated by the fact that they couldn't catch him.
The officers in this department that are working on this case are frustrated because there's just no evidence to give any firm leads. We're doing everything humanly possible to catch this man.
He was a phantom.
Descriptions ranged pretty widely. One person thought he was Hispanic.
And now all of a sudden, he's blonde hair, blue-eyed. There are like 8, 9, 10 drawings of him, and they have completely changed.
The best descriptions that we had were his height and his possible weight. We knew he wore a size 9 shoe.
When the police were taking the victim's statements, many of the women described his penis as being very, very small.
We said, all right, if he is so underendowed, we went to a doctor who specialized in what I would call infantile penises to see if he had any patients that came in, and we didn't have any luck there.
It's a very serious situation. I think it's very dangerous. And the last thing I think of when I'm going to bed is I look at the doorway in my bedroom and I think that he could be standing there.
Detective Daly was following every lead.
We filled out a long background form for the victims. Where did they go to school? What did they look like? What age were they? You know, what was their build? There was no pattern among any of the victims because he was just prowling. He would see them and follow them home.
Margaret Wardlow, she was just 13 years old when she was attacked by the East Area rapists.
Margaret was probably the strongest young victim I have ever talked to.
Growing up in Sacramento was great. Where we lived was ideal. It was right next to the American River. Go down there with my dog after school, go fishing. Totally felt safe.
Margaret had a curiosity about her. She wanted to know about the East Area rapists.
I was a reader of everything I could get my hands on that had to do with this individual. Like, what was making this guy tick? Why was he doing this?
She herself became a victim. I believe there was a pre-wired strength in her mind that helped her survive this attack.
It was a school night, just my mother and myself. I went to bed at like a regular school night hour. I was awoken about 2:30 in the morning with a flashlight in my face. I thought it was a joke. I thought my mom had asked him to like come in and wake me up and scare me or something.
As he tied her up and then went into the mother's room, Margaret knew that either her or her mother were going to be the victim.
The rapist tied up her mother and put plates on her back as a warning device.
He did that with so many of the victims when there was more than one person in the house. If he heard anybody moving, he was right back and told them, don't move, I'm going to kill you, I'll kill you.
Putting the dishes on someone's back, he knows he has to do something, either hurt them, flee. So as much of the bravado as he's trying to convey, he's scared of the physical confrontation.
A little voice inside of me said, you know, you get out of a lot of stuff, Margaret, but you're not going to get out of this one. The whole time he'd been threatening me. He'd been saying, do you want to die? He wanted fear. He wanted to see fear in me.
This is your psychological sadist. He is enjoying controlling that woman like that.
This guy was so beyond the pale, and that was why Michelle was so interested in him, is because he was so frightening.
The way he walks around people's houses and the way he destroys them and sort of hangs out and eats, there's something so psychologically fascinating about that to me. It's like he got to the emotional center of people's lives and just wanted to destroy that.
Michelle caught the bug. She started going down the rabbit holes in this case. At this point, instead of writing a book, she was investigating the case.
I'm obsessed. It's not healthy. I know the strangest details about him. I know his blood type. I I know his penis size. He vaulted fences. He escaped foot chases. But I believe it's the rare moments when he was human that will be his downfall in the end.
As time went on, this East Area rapist started to crisscross Sacramento, attacking women home alone or women with their kids in the middle of the night.
He seemed to be expanding what his capabilities were when he was carrying out these crimes.
He became much more aggressive in his tactics. He did more horrible things than I can even describe.
This tells us that the offender is adapting and learning as he is committing crimes. He really messes with people's minds, both the investigators and the victims.
Part of the thrill of the game for him was a kind of connect-the-dots puzzle he played with people. He stole 2 packs of Winston cigarettes from the first victim and left them outside the 4th victim's house. Junk jewelry stolen from a neighbor 2 weeks earlier was left at the 5th victim's house. It was a power play, a signal of ubiquity. I am both nowhere and everywhere. You may not think you have something in common with your neighbor, but you do. Me.
Michelle started as a blogger talking about cases that no one else was paying attention to and trying to get people motivated to look at those cases.
The case dragged me under quickly. Curiosity turned to clawing hunger. I was on the hunt, absorbed by a click fever that connected my propulsive tapping with a dopamine rush. I wasn't alone. I found a group of hardcore seekers who congregated on an online message board and exchanged clues and theories on the case.
Citizen sleuths, they are ordinary people that go to work, they go home, they put their kids to bed, and then they go on the computer. And they spend hours and hours trying to solve certain crimes.
My name is Paul Haynes. I was Michelle McNamara's research collaborator. When I first began learning about the case, there was a specific forum dedicated to the East Area Rapist. It was the most active forum on that website.
Paul Haynes was a writer living in Florida, and Michelle recognized that he had a great proclivity for digging into old archives and things. It was a case that a lot of citizen detectives got into because there were so many clues.
Earons wasn't a supervillain. He was a man, a guy with habits and traits and preferences that, with enough examination, should shine like Hansel's breadcrumbs in the woods.
My name is Kay Gilbraith, and I call myself a researcher. I started seeing patterns emerging to me where I became convinced it was solvable, because all of the crimes had common bonds.
He was leaving ligatures at the scene with this particular knot.
He would eat food out of the victims' refrigerators. I was spending every waking hour trying to find men who fit the criteria. And it was at that time that I first connected with Michelle.
It's a fascinating community. I had been on those boards for a while following the story because everyone had such great information.
Michelle's quest was to get this case solved. She just had an abiding curiosity in letting the details lead us to the perpetrator.
The East Area Rapist would target not people, but neighborhoods. You can see the proximity of these homes to green belts like drainage ditches and creeks and canals.
We believe he used the canal as an escape route, which ran along the back of so many properties. He was a great escape artist.
These are passageways that this killer used to surveil the residents unseen, cloaked by the darkness of these green belts.
He was able to look over those fences, look into those homes, look at what time people ate dinner. I mean, he knew what time the husband left.
The Sacramento Sheriff's Office has invested more than 40,000 man-hours in the search for the East Area Rapist.
Sacramento would have a helicopter up in the sky, and they all knew it was because they were chasing the East Area Rapist.
It was terrible. It was terrible to hear that. Well, he didn't like it either. And it turns out that he served in Vietnam. He left Sacramento because of that helicopter. And then these things started up in the East Bay of San Francisco.
There are two things known about the rapist. One is he has never been caught in a home where there was a man present. The other is he's never been in a home where there has been a big dog.
The East Area Rapist worked on challenges. Everything he saw in the paper, if we said he didn't do something, he did it the next time.
When the newspapers reported that he was just attacking single females, he took this as a challenge.
At attack number 16, he started to attack with a man present, and then 2/3 of the attacks he does since then has a man present. He is purposefully choosing couples.
My name's Gay Hardwick.
And my name's Bob Hardwick, and we've been married 41 years this August. Happily married 41 years.
Bob and Gay Hardwick were a couple living in Stockton, California.
We had picked out a home in one of the little picture-perfect tree-lined streets. We were just happy in our new home, living together. The day of our attack was March 18th, 1978, and we were attack number 31. We had gone out to dinner and a movie, normal Friday night, and we came home around 10 o'clock and went to bed. Later that night, we were awakened by very bright light right in our faces and a voice saying, "Wake up, wake up."
The attack on Bob and Gay Hardwick was much like all the other attacks in that he confronted Bob and Gay when they were in bed. He ordered her at gunpoint to bind Bob.
Nothing you can do when there's a .357 Magnum pointed
at your head.
He then bound Gay. He retied Bob.
Turns him over, puts the plates on his back as a warning device.
Things would go silent for a period of time. And then as soon as they moved, he was right in their face. Move and I'll kill you.
Ultimately, he moved Gay into the living room where he sexually assaulted her.
You're convinced at that moment that this is not a full human being that you're dealing with.
He can not only humiliate a woman who's about to rape, but he can also completely, in his mind, emasculate her partner, putting him in a position where he is helpless and has to listen to what's going on in a different room.
These attacks are happening in the macho 1970s, $6 million man.
We have the capability to make the world's first bionic man.
Well, talk to me, good buddy.
And Burt Reynolds, these are the icons. And the men were not looked at as victims. They were looked at as just being weak for not being able to protect their wives and their girlfriends.
I never talked to anybody about it over the years. I just wanted to put it out of my mind,
It was, we're gonna get through this. We're gonna get back to normal. And you don't ever really make it to normal.
It was tough, but I loved her, and I said we're gonna get through it.
Our home never felt the same again. Every surface that you could think of was covered in fingerprint dust. It just looked like a smoke bomb had been set off in our house. It was contaminated and ruined for us.
He wasn't out attacking people on lovers' lanes or in parks. He was attacking people where they feel the most safe, in bed with their partner in their home. And he was able to say, you know what? I have so much power, I can take all of that security away and devastate your life.
Why couldn't they catch him? Somehow, he was always one step ahead of law enforcement, and they wondered, could he be one of us?
After the East Area Rapist would terrorize these women, sometimes he would call them and taunt them.
Hello? Hello?
This rapist did not stop with just the assault of that night. He terrorized them their whole lives.
This is that psychological sadist at work. He is getting off on continuing to cause fear in his victim.
I'm Michelle McNamara of TrueCrimeDiary.com. Larry Crompton is a retired lieutenant for the Contra Costa Sheriff's Department. He worked on the Rapist Task Force in the 70s.
How optimistic are you that he may be caught one day?
Very, very optimistic.
I had worked many crimes while I was on the department, but none of them were really like this. I knew what these people went through, and I knew what the family was going through. I couldn't let it go. And for many years, it was me. What did I miss? What did I do wrong? Why didn't I catch him?
Helicopters, roadblocks, citizen patrols taking down plate numbers, hypnotists, psychics, nothing. You were a scent and shoe impressions. Bloodhounds and detectives tracked both. They led away. They led nowhere.
He next shows up down in Modesto in June of 1978. He attacks a couple down there.
That turned out to be true.
You should have seen me coming.
One of the things that's important to remember when you're looking at Joseph D'Angelo is he actually graduated with an associate degree in police science.
He had told Bonnie that his aspiration was to join the California Highway Patrol.
You should have seen me coming.
He studied evidence and he studied crime scene.
He went to Northern California, and he applied with the Auburn Police Department and was hired there. And then that's when he started his rapes.
He actually started out committing crimes as a teenager. At some point, he even blew up a dog with a firework, killed the dog while he was committing a residential burglary.
You should have seen me coming.
It makes sense that somebody who has a need for control, wants to be in power, would be attracted to a position that allows him to have that every single day.
When I was working the cases, I thought he's got to be in law enforcement.
The first clue was in attack number 3 in Sacramento. He had gloves on to protect from fingerprints, and he's got a gun in one hand and a padded baton.
You had better catch him. He is going to kill. He wants to kill.
It was never enough to commit the horrible crimes. It always had to be, and let me do something more.
We all want to think that we would recognize a serial killer based on how this person looks.
I wonder if he was out stalking his next victim. I don't know, because everything seems so normal.
The scariest aspects of serial killers is they don't look different.
From the very beginning, I knew DNA was going to solve this case.
Police had been sitting on this genetic fingerprint for 4 decades.
Holy smokes, this is like the big break.
He's been living there under everybody's noses.
This is the Golden State Killer?
I just want to tell you, buddy, to rot in hell.
Michelle McNamara was a true crime blogger.
She was a citizen detective and a true crime writer.
She was talking to her publisher about writing a book that didn't have an ending.
My interest in crime has personal roots. The unsolved murder of a neighbor when I was 14 sparked a fascination with cold cases. What gripped me was the specter of that question mark where the killer's face should be. I need to see his face. He loses his power when we know his face.
When I'm puzzling over the details of an unsolved crime, I'm like a rat in a maze given a task. The world narrows, the search propels. I felt in the truest sense of the word gripped. I had a murder habit, and it was bad. I would feed it for the rest of my life.
I consider Michelle McNamara a friend. She impacted the Golden State Killer case. One way we're able to keep on investigating the case is to have public interest, to have the online interest, and she helped push that.
On a sleepless night last July, I Googled a description of a pair of cufflinks he stole. Then a jolt of recognition. There they were. I bought them immediately. The best thing to do, I knew, was to turn the cufflinks over to an authority on the killer.
As soon as I saw those cufflinks, I thought, this is pretty astonishing. I photographed those and sent those to surviving victims because it was potentially a very good lead in the case.
Unfortunately, the cufflinks didn't pan out. The victims looked at them and they weren't the cufflinks that were stolen.
And she was devastated. I don't know if Michelle was convinced she could solve the case, but I believe that she was convinced she could make a difference and that she wanted to do it for the victims.
He forced the woman at knife point to tie up her boyfriend, then he tied her up and raped her. The East Area Rapist has struck 40 times in the last 2.5 years, and he hasn't been caught yet.
He started inflicting real physical pain on the victims, like punching, giving black eyes.
One of the most sadistic things I think that he would do would be to say to them, I'm going to cut off a piece of your wife and bring it back to you.
We knew that he was becoming more and more angry.
As fear in the community intensified, Detective Carol Daly held regular public forums.
One thing I want to emphasize, ladies, is for you not to be polite. If you are going to defend yourself, you injure him enough to incapacitate him in any way that you can.
I started working with these cases, and I thought, if I can talk to one of the people that deal with these rapists, maybe I can get into the head of what I'm looking for. Vacaville Medical Center is where they have rapists that have been convicted.
The men were asked what they thought was motivating the East Area Rapists.
The mere fact that he ties his victims up has to have him completely submissive. You can sense the conquest he had.
You're not what you think you are, and you won't accept it, so you strike out to prove to them that you are, but in reality you aren't. And until you face that, you're going to keep on going and going.
If I'm willing to kill you, the first move you make, you're going to be dead.
The doctor told me, you had better catch him. He is going to kill. He wants to kill.
He first becomes a burglar, and then he progresses to sexual assault, and then proceeds to escalate to murder.
The East Area Rapist disappeared from Northern California in July of 1979. He showed up in Santa Barbara in October of '79, and shortly thereafter, he starts killing.
The Pacific Ocean was warming up, an inviting churn of white caps making its way towards soft sand and an endless line of 100-foot palm trees. Golden teenage boys with blank hair and effortless muscles headed for the water with their boards in a gait the locals called the Surfer Bounce. This was Santa Barbara's magic time.
Dr. Offerman was an orthopedic surgeon. He had begun dating a psychologist named Alexandra Manning.
On the morning of December 30th, 1979, some friends of Robert Offerman's had shown up at his condo for a tennis game. There was no answer at the door.
I went in the sliding door and looked around the living room.
On the floor, there were Christmas ornaments that had fallen off on the ground.
Some balloons right by the sliding door, which I thought he would leave it there, so we knew something was wrong. So I took a right towards his bedroom, and that's when I saw Miss Manning on the bed, and he was on the floor.
Offerman and Manning both were shot and killed.
It was the holidays. As authorities processed the crime scene, they stepped around a turkey carcass wrapped in cellophane that had been discarded on the patio. They concluded that at some point the killer had opened the refrigerator and helped himself to Dr. Offerman's leftover Christmas dinner.
It was never enough to commit the horrible crimes. It always had to be, and let me do something more. Let me go into your refrigerator and eat your holiday meal. The level of depravity that this man had and the execution of it was despicable and shocking.
Larry Crompton, who led the EAR task force in Contra Costa County, reached out to Santa Barbara investigators and told them this sounds like the East Area Rapist that we've been dealing with.
When I called Santa Barbara and talked to the lieutenant and said, I heard that you had a double homicide, would like to know about it because we think it's our rapist that is down there. And he said, don't know what you're talking about. Haven't had anything like that. Nope.
Law enforcement agencies weren't necessarily as connected as they are now. I think there was still this thought that these were isolated instances throughout California.
And that was it. It was so frustrating.
I am sure that Larry Crompton called many jurisdictions because he truly believed that the rapist would move on and become a killer.
Santa Barbara is an enclave of rich people. You've got Ronald Reagan. You've got people that are worried about their property values. They don't want news about a double murder in a house going wide. Pretty soon it gets off the front page.
He gets a taste for not only murdering people, but murdering them after these prolonged, terrifying times in their homes.
In 1979, a new and terrifying chapter. He starts a killing spree.
2 double murders in Goleta, the 1 double murder in Ventura, the murder in Irvine, and the double murder in Dana Point.
The rampage of violence was brutal and unstoppable.
4 horrible murders within a 6-block radius in a suburban middle-class neighborhood.
We knew it was the same person, but we couldn't prove it.
Profilers of that day said, I know of no one who does what this offender does.
I thought once he started killing, there's no way he can stop, and he's going to continue to do it.
Most violent criminals smash through life like human sledgehammers. They're caught easily, but every so often a blue moon surfaces. A snow leopard slinks by.
After 1981, we don't have an attack for 5 years.
Well, I think people slow down in life. You don't have that sort of energy to be prowling. Like, you literally can't be out at 3 a.m., like, running across roofs, because you're not 18 anymore.
I don't believe that his sexual deviances went away, but I can believe that he found other, less risky ways of satisfying those urges.
Could he have moved out of the state, out of the country? Could he have died, got medicated? I mean, I don't know.
In 1981, Joe DeAngelo became a father. The first of his 3 daughters was born. The second of his 3 daughters was born in '86. And then his 3rd daughter was born in 1989.
He had a wife who was a lawyer. He lived a middle-class existence.
He sent all his girls through Montessori schools, and he would take them to their different sports events, the horseback riding, the roller skating.
We all want to think that we would recognize a serial killer based on how this person looks. And yet, so often, this is somebody who's living in the community, who knows his neighbors, and I think that is one of the scariest aspects of serial killers, is they don't look different from other people.
My sister and I, Melody, used to take turns going out and babysitting while Sharon was in school. And I didn't start thinking about it till after he was arrested. Because when they started showing all these dates, I'm going, oh my goodness. I wonder if he was out stalking his next victim. I don't know.
It's been 5 years with no more rapes or murders by Joseph DeAngelo.
For some reason, he runs across beautiful 18-year-old Janelle Cruz and can't help himself and kills her.
Janelle was kind of a shy girl. She was very pretty, very popular.
The brief life of Janelle Cruz was no less tragic than her death. Her biological father was long out of the picture.
Her parents had gone to a cruise with her 6-year-old brother, and she was staying at the residence alone.
And for the first time, left my daughter alone, because that was another thing that I never did, because I was worried that if I was gone, that something might happen.
Janelle Cruz had had a friend over to the house and heard noises in the backyard.
They got up to inspect that, saw nothing.
And sometime that night, Janelle was confronted by an intruder. She was raped, and then she was bludgeoned to death.
And I got that telephone call that every mother and any family member is just devastated by.
The Janelle case just felt like such an outlier because he had decided to go after couples, and then he had stopped for a really long time, and then he attacks Janelle. And then that seemingly is his last attack.
Some think you died or went to prison. Not me. I think you bailed when the world began to change.
In the 1970s, there was no DNA.
The investigators had evidence, but couldn't connect the crime scenes. They needed the science to catch up.
DNA didn't enter the forensic landscape until about 1986, 1987.
It would take 15 years for DNA to finally link the Northern California East Area Rapist series with the Southern California homicides, as all being done by one man.
I was immediately on the phone to Larry Poole down at Orange County Sheriff's Office, and we're talking about, holy smokes, this is like the big break.
But detectives still had no idea who he was.
I got a little excited maybe in the first 18 to 24 months, but over the years, I chronicled and logged over 8,700 suspects in the investigation.
After 5 years, we got no match, and after 10 years, we got no match, and we just were not getting a hit.
When people have asked whether it worries me that the killer may still be out there, I wave dismissively, pointing out that he'd be much older now. He can't hurt me, I say, not realizing that in every sleepless hour, in every minute spent hunting him and not cuddling my daughter, he already has.
Michelle McNamara was a mom, married to actor Patton Oswalt, investigating this case and working on a book. Patton describes her as staying awake at all hours of the night, would not put down her computer, would not put away the files.
At the same time, struggling with her writing and publication deadlines, and she began self-medicating. I actually see her as being his final victim.
I got an email from a friend of Michelle's, and he told me that Michelle had passed away that morning. I think I went completely numb.
I eventually learned that she had fallen asleep and didn't get up.
According to the medical examiner's report, Michelle died from a combination of fentanyl, Xanax, and I believe Adderall. And that's when the magnitude of her loss hit me.
I immediately thought, what can I do? I can help finish this book. When Michelle passed, we decided at the end of the book, what are the strings that she left us to get us out of this maze? It was genetic genealogy.
From the very beginning, I knew DNA was going to solve this case.
Thousands of pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, and only one person knew what it was supposed to look like. That one person wasn't Michelle. It was the killer himself.
It has now been 40 years that one of the most prolific serial killers in American history has managed to elude police. The man known as the Golden State Killer has been linked to 50 rapes and 13 murders. Police are frustrated and running out of leads.
I have no path to go on this investigation. None of the tips are coming in or anything that I'm excited about, so I'm floundering.
When Michelle passed and me and Paul were working on the book, we talk about what are the strings that she left us to get us out of this maze. And it was genetic genealogy.
Forensic genealogy was something that Michelle was excited about, and that seemed like the most viable, direct pathway to this offender's identity.
Hi, and welcome to 23andMe.
Companies like Ancestry.com and 23andMe had already been using genetic genealogy for years, allowing millions of customers to spit into a tube and use their DNA to discover family roots and long-lost relatives.
Ancestry.com searches the world's largest online family history research.
There's a growing number, particular of adoptees, are realizing these sites that are really created for learning about family history can help me start to figure out who I'm biologically related to. To help people to find their biological mothers, to find their biological fathers.
How are you?
To find siblings, to find cousins.
It wasn't too long for people to realize, wait a minute, what if we use the DNA of criminals to try and identify their second cousins or third cousins and try to narrow it down from there?
I start learning how this technology could be used. We become blown away at the power of it. And then we recognize this is the way we need to go. But then there was a concern as to whether we had enough DNA. I had consumed all the East Area Rapist DNA, doing all the testing I had done over the years.
And he found a pristine DNA sample going back to the 1980 murder of Lyman and Charlene Smith in Ventura County.
A second sexual assault kit in the coroner's office that had never been opened.
To my knowledge, there are no other medical examiners who make duplicate rape kits.
In March of 1980, Lyman and Charlene Smith were found bludgeoned to death in their bed.
It was a horrific scene that I will never forget. I'd arrive at the scene with my little suitcase, a tube rack, dry ice, and a microscope. I always made duplicate kits, and both kits were identical.
That turned out to be a gold mine for us because that second kit had sat in the coroner's possession for 38 years untouched. And so these swabs collected from Charlene Smith's body were pristine.
Police had been sitting on this genetic fingerprint for 4 decades, waiting for the science to catch up. Genetic genealogy had only been used to solve a criminal case once before by a woman named Barbara Ray Venter.
I've always liked puzzles. I used to love playing Clue when I was a kid. What I've discovered is that law enforcement are pretty big gossips. And so they were all sort of talking amongst each other. And apparently Paul was talking to the detective on the other case.
And I was like, how did you do that? I called Barbara up and I explained, I'm working a case. It's an old case. I don't tell her what case it is. But could this be done to identify this unknown offender?
So Paul Holes was able to take that DNA and convert it into a DNA profile, which is basically a number. And he used this no-frills genealogy website called GEDmatch.
And I just uploaded the Golden State Killer's profile and allowed the GEDmatch servers to do their magic and produce the list of people that potentially shared some DNA with my offender.
We were all logging in several times a day to see if the matches are there.
Then all of a sudden, he started connecting to some distant relatives. We're talking 3rd, 4th, 5th cousins.
So we immediately knew that we were going to be building a lot of family trees to sort out who he was.
We're now trying to identify common ancestors from this list of people who share DNA with the person we're looking for. And we end up spending 4 months building family trees.
And unlike if you were to upload your DNA to a website and try to build out a family tree from yourself being the beginning point, this is reverse engineering a family tree. So you start with a wide swath of potential relatives, and by a painstaking process of elimination, you start cutting down that pool. Narrow it down, narrow it down, narrow it down.
Genealogy testing had indicated that our offender was of European descent.
40% Southern European, and a number of the matches that we had were with people who had Italian surnames.
Once it came down to that final pool, that's when the real detective work began. You had to hit public records. Things like marriage certificates, birth certificates, grave site markings.
So now we only had 6 men on the list. So now they had to be a certain age, they had to be in Northern California, and they had to be related only through the maternal line to our crime scene DNA. And at that point, we then had one other piece of information that we hadn't applied yet, and that was eye color.
She looks at a separate tool on a related site that suggests that their suspect had blue eyes and was bald.
The FBI then pulled the California DMV records for those 6 men. Only one had blue eyes.
Joseph DeAngelo.
Joseph DeAngelo.
Joseph DeAngelo. After 4 decades and countless hours of detective work, it's an emerging technology, genetic genealogy, that finally gives investigators their strongest lead yet, a name.
Who is this guy? I need to start drilling down on him, and I'm now within a couple of weeks of retiring. So I'm trying to find out as much as possible, as fast as possible, about Joe DeAngelo.
He's not in any of the criminal databases, so police start putting together a case to either eliminate him or prove he is in fact the man they're looking for.
Physically, he was within the specs of what we were expecting for the Golden State Killer. Born in 1945, a little bit on the older side, but most certainly within that 1940 to 1960 range.
Investigators started zeroing in on Joseph DeAngelo, and they started digging up things about his past.
He goes into the Navy. We know he is stationed in San Diego. We know that he spent some time overseas.
Joe DeAngelo returned to Sacramento, began working with the Auburn Police Department.
He had a nickname on the department. It was Junk Food Joey. He would always have a Coke in his hand, a bag of chips, a candy bar. He really violated people's space all the time. Get kind of close to your face and always be touching you.
He had been fired from Auburn Police back in 1979.
He had been observed shoplifting a can of dog repellent and a hammer from a Citrus Heights drugstore. He was accosted by the clerk. He was subsequently arrested.
Auburn Police Chief Nick Willick had to fire DeAngelo at the time.
And the chief said when Joe was put on administrative leave, he had threatened to kill me.
I immediately remembered back my daughter, being afraid. A short time after he had been fired, she said, there was someone looking in my bedroom window with a flashlight.
She said he got up and ran outside. That man was gone, but there were shoe impressions all around the perimeter of his house.
But there's another huge piece of the puzzle they had been investigating in relation to possible suspects, and that piece also seemingly falls into place in DeAngelo's story, Bonnie.
There's a newspaper clip from an Auburn journal about the engagement, and there's this picture of a young brunette. She's 18 years old.
Announcing his engagement in 1970 to a woman named Bonnie Colwell.
Remember, Bonnie was one of DeAngelo's early girlfriends who broke off their engagement. So suddenly, Detective Holes and others were like, wait a minute, could this be Bonnie that we remember following early on in the case?
And of course, Bonnie was significant due to the victim in attack number 36.
While the East Area Rapist is literally raping that victim, he is crying and he's saying, I hate you, Bonnie, over and over. I'm now within days of retiring. It's like, okay, I've got to go boots on the ground on this DeAngelo.
More and more things connect and click. Right place, right time. Let's go see if this is the guy.
I'm now my second to last day at work. And I go, I have to go see this guy, where he's living. And I park on the curb, directly opposite from DeAngelo's house. There's a car in the driveway. I'm pretty sure he's home. And I'm sitting there, and I'm wondering, what's the likelihood, really, that this is the Golden State Killer?
A day before his retirement, Paul Holes literally has the suspect in his crosshairs. It's been a 24-year hunt, but he uses restraint and turns in his badge the next day.
It was a tough decision to drive away from that house that day. I was upset. I was like, I didn't solve this case before I retired.
The Sacramento Sheriff's Office picks up where Paul Holes left off.
And so what they have to do next is conduct surveillance on Joseph DeAngelo. And what they're waiting for is an opportunity to collect his DNA.
And they secretly follow him to a shopping plaza.
But Joseph was not smoking, he was not spitting out gum. So what they had to work with was he had a car, they swabbed the door handle. And that gave them something that's called touch DNA.
They were able to pick up an initial DNA sample and some fingerprints from his car door.
I'm sitting in a Chinese restaurant in Colorado Springs, and my cell phone rings, and it's Lieutenant Kirk Campbell from Sacramento DA's office. You can absolutely not tell anybody about this. And at that moment I go, okay. And he says, the lab is excited about this.
It's mixed with DNA from other people, but it looks like it might be a close match.
But the Sacramento DA was saying, we want a cleaner sample.
So they stake out his house, wait for him to put out the trash.
He puts his trash out on the curb. They get a guy that comes and collects the trash.
They sneak over and pull tissue out of the trash bin and take that back to the lab.
And one of the items out of the trash had a single source male DNA profile that matched 100% the Golden State Killer's DNA profile.
Get this call from my chief deputy.
His first words are you sitting down? And I asked him a million times, and I'm like, you better not be messing with me. He goes, they're shaking, Anne-Marie. They're shaking at the crime lab.
They got a match, but now they have to get the suspect into custody. So they call Paul Holes back to assist with the operation.
There was concerns about how he would respond if this did not go smoothly.
I can imagine they were prepared for every scenario. This is somebody who has been a sophisticated, a diverse, sadistic killer.
A law enforcement team now gathers outside DeAngelo's home for the takedown. He and his wife have been separated for decades, and he's living with his daughter and granddaughter.
The hope is to get him away from his house in order to be able to do it safely. So at a certain point, DeAngelo's over off to the side of his house. It looks like a prime spot. And then we just hear over the radio, go.
You can run on for a long time, run on for a long time.
He's been called the East Side Rapist, the Visalia Ransacker, the original Night Stalker,
run on for a long time,
and the Golden State Killer. Today, it's our pleasure to call him Defendant.
Sooner or later, God will cut you down.
That bombshell arrest, that former police officer.
72-year-old Joseph James DeAngelo.
He's been described as one of the most prolific serial killers that terrorized California for decades.
Sooner or later, God will cut you down.
The arrest of Joseph DeAngelo dropped like a bomb. All these years, hiding in plain sight.
Oh my God, he's living in Sacramento? He's been living there under everybody's noses for all this time? It was stunning.
It's a moment when you realize that 40 years of work by a lot of folks to bring some answers to some family members was becoming real.
It's just unbelievable. After all these years, they got him.
I feel I reverted right back. That part that I was so successful at tucking away in my brain, that door opened. I was shaking.
It was hard to process. I know after I got the call, the tears welled up. Thousands of nightmares and thousands of sleepless nights have come to a rest.
It was just something that was on my mind for all those years. Want him caught before I die.
We could finally put a face and a name to this masked individual that was terrorizing all these communities back in the 70s and 80s.
Joseph DeAngelo's first arraignment in court.
Please make sure your cell phones are silent.
Was a complete madhouse. It was a zoo. In the front rows were family members of victims and victims themselves.
We're all super, super nervous. I start sobbing and sobbing, and I couldn't stop.
Joseph James DeAngelo.
And then that moment, Joseph DeAngelo, in a red-orange jumpsuit that says prisoner on the back, rolls in a wheelchair, hunched over, his hands handcuffed.
This is the Golden State Killer? This old man? And he looks so harmless. And I think that is exactly the impression that he wants to create.
Is Joseph James DeAngelo your true and correct legal name? I'm sorry? Yeah. Yes, you have.
At that moment, you could hear gasps. There was something about his voice that clearly brought back years of pain and fear.
I thought, this has got to be a big act.
In the week prior, he's riding a motorcycle at high speeds. He was walking around just fine.
And within a day of his arrest, he's all of a sudden bound to a wheelchair.
But then, the jail surveillance camera tells a very different story.
He's climbing up on the bunks and getting up on the vents and cleaning things.
Doing exercises in the jail cell.
He's a master of disguise. He used that during all of his crimes, and he is continuing to use it, but now in a different way.
Victims are still processing it. And the big question, why? Why did he do all of this?
What really did transpire? Why he became this person, this predator?
I think that's the million-dollar question.
Mr. DeAngelo would like to make a brief statement.
I'd like to get into his mind to talk to him and find out what brought him up to where he was.
There is no recipe for a serial killer. We can see all of these markers or all of these risk factors along the way. We have a physically abusive dad.
And a relative reveals a bombshell in that HBO docuseries All Be Gone in the Dark, detailing how Joseph DeAngelo, at the age of 9 or 10, allegedly witnessed his younger sister being sexually assaulted.
She was 7 years old. The very thing that happened to my mother is the very thing that my uncle went and did to other women. How sickening is that?
It would be so easy for us as forensic psychologists if we could kind of go, a person is abused, and therefore they become this kind of offender.
The vast majority of people don't turn into serial rapists and serial killers. So it's hard to feel the sympathy for these offenders or to say that this event made him do it.
Bonnie certainly is not responsible for DeAngelo's actions, and the breakup did not cause those actions.
Sentencing today for the so-called Golden State Killer.
Former police officer Joseph DeAngelo Jr.
committed rapes and murders all across California.
This is the matter of the people of the state of California versus Joseph James DeAngelo.
This will be the first time that these people have seen him since the nights that they were victimized.
This is a network of people that have come together that never knew each other, but share one thing in common.
On March 18th, 1978, Joe DeAngelo attacked us while we were sleeping. He kidnapped me from my bed. He raped me repeatedly.
I want you to look at me. You bound my wrist and ankles. You blindfolded me. Remember that?
At 3 different times that night, I thought I was going to die.
No 13-year-old should have to find out what a rape kit is. My family couldn't hide the agony in their faces.
What matters is that you will spend the rest of your life in prison, and I survived.
I just want to tell you, buddy, to rot in hell.
You will forever be known as a repulsive coward who hid behind a mask of evil. The devil can keep you company in your prison cell as he gnaws away at whatever soul you have left.
Mr. DeAngelo would like to make a brief statement.
I've listened to all your statements, and I'm truly sorry to everyone I've hurt.
Mr. DeAngelo is sentenced to a total of 11 life without the possibility of parole sentences, plus an additional life sentence, plus an additional 8 years. The survivors have spoken clearly. The defendant deserves no mercy.
In the end, we may have lost a battle one night, but we've won the war of life.